The rush of the river seemed suddenly hushed, as though the Trident itself paused to witness the moment history bent upon its banks. Beneath the sky turned pewter with late-afternoon storm clouds, Prince Rhaegar Targaryen sat astride his pale stallion, dawn fire, splashes of crimson and blue water sliding from the polished curve of his breastplate. Robert Baratheon lay sprawled a dozen paces away, his great stag antler helm cracked, his warhammer cast into mud streaked with the banners of Storm's End. The thunder of hooves and the clash of steel had ebbed into scattered screams, groans, and the ragged calls of men rallying blurred companies. Yet around Rhaegar there was a widening hush, a ring of awe and dread as both friend and foe beheld the ruby-red prince victorious, his black hair dripping, his dark eyes fixed upon the fallen rebel lord. A breath later Sir Jon Connington rode up, blood on his cheek but a triumphant smile ghosting across his lips. "Your Grace," he said, voice catching on the new title, for although Aerys yet clutched the Iron Throne back in King's Landing, every knight on the field could feel how fate had shifted. "The day is ours." Rhaegar drew a long breath that tasted of rain and iron. Robert stirred, struggled to his knees, and glared up through the slit of a battered visor. Never had the crowned stag appeared so mortal. "Finish it," Robert snarled, spitting blood. "End your father's madness with my life if you dare." Yet in Rhaegar's heart there was neither triumph nor bloodlust, only a somber weariness. He dismounted, boots sinking into silt, and approached. "Robert," he said, and the name fell soft as a prayer lost in wind. "Your strength is known. Your grievance is heard. But the realm needs peace. What realm accepts dragons?" Robert winced as crimson trickled down his beard. "I'll die, but another shall rise. Ned. Stannis. The North and the Stormlands will never bow to a king who stole Lyanna." At the name, Rhaegar's throat tightened. Above the river a sudden flash of lightning mirrored memory, a tower of pale stone, a blue winter rose wilted upon a silent breast. He knelt, removed his helm, and set it upon the muddy ground. "I did not steal her. I loved her. That was my sin." Fractured silence ensued, broken only by the hiss of steady rain. Around them, knights of the King's Guard formed a loose circle. Ser Arthur Dane, cloak ragged but sword unstained. Ser Oswell went, helm dented. Ser Barristan Selmy, his silver hair clinging wet to his brow. Their white cloaks clung heavy with water and gore, yet their poise remained unshaken. "Spare Robert," Barristan murmured, stepping close. "Mercy now may buy 1,000 mercies later." "Mercy," Jon Connington echoed. "And send him to a dungeon to rot and fester like bitter wine? He will rally traitors from a cell, my prince. We should strike off his head before dusk." "No," Rhaegar said, rising. "Bind his wounds. Guard him well." He gazed across the battlefield where ravens already circled. "This war ends tonight, or it will never end." Storm clouds broke upon the red stone walls of King's Landing 3 days later as Prince Rhaegar rode through the Lion Gate with an honor guard of King's Guard and loyal Reachmen. No bells rang. The streets that once thrummed with vendors and bawdy songs lay hushed beneath a pall of soot-laden sky. Whispers scuttled like rats down alleys. The Mad King had barricaded himself inside the Red Keep, wildfire caches rumored beneath every paving stone. Yet even whispers faltered when Rhaegar appeared. Those bold enough to peer from shuttered windows saw not the arcane air sung of by minstrels, but a man hollow-eyed from sleeplessness, his violet gaze turned inward, tinctured with grief. He rode slowly, greeting none, thinking only of how to dethrone a father without shattering a kingdom. Inside Maegor's holdfast, Grand Maester Pycelle awaited, stooped over a scroll crusted with red wax. "Your, Highness," he quavered, uncertain how to style the prince who was and was not yet king. "His Majesty refuses counsel." Ser Jaime Lannister stands sentinel before the royal apartments, blade drawn against any who approach. Rhaegar removed his gloves. The corridor beyond smelled of smoke and cold stone. "Summon Lord Varys," he said, "and send for Lord Tywin. Tell him his allegiance must be made plain. The lions will not stalk both aisles of the hall." Pycelle bowed but ventured. "And your wife, Princess Elia?" "She was conveyed to the Tower of the Hand under Lord Mandash. She is safe." Rhaegar's voice wavered. "And the children?" "Unharmed," the Grand Maester affirmed. "Yet anxious, of course." Aegon fevered slightly from the journey. Rhaegar closed his eyes. Duty warred with dread. Elia's frail health had been tested by the ride from Dragonstone, yet she had insisted on reuniting the family where the fate of Westeros would soon be sealed. Lyanna remained miles north at the cloistered tower where Rhaegar's dreams, no, his folly, had left her hidden. He felt torn between two joys, two guilts, two destinies, and somewhere distant the dragon in his blood screamed. In the Hall of 1,000 Flames, only two fires burned upon either side of the Iron Throne, each casting flickering banners of orange that danced across jagged black steel. Aerys II Targaryen sat hunched like a carrion bird, his silver beard unkempt, nails as long as talons. Smoke drifted through the chamber from braziers sputtering on resinous logs that reeked of pine tar. Ser Jaime, white cloak immaculate, stood guard at the foot of the throne, sword angled downward in rigid salute. "Traitor," the king rasped upon seeing his son. "You collude with rebels, bring them to my gates." "I have brought the realm," Rhaegar replied, stepping forward. His armor removed, he wore only simple crimson velvet cinched with a leather belt. The modesty jarred against the crude majesty of Aerys' throne. "Father, the realm bleeds. Crownlands, Stormlands, the North, Dragonstone, all bleed. End it now. Yield the crown to me and live out your days in peace at Summerhall or Dragonstone." Aerys coughed a wet laugh. "Peace? There is no peace without fear. I am fire made flesh, and I will watch them burn. I warned Ross Art, ignite the wildfire beneath Flea Bottom. Teach the wretches proper awe." Rhaegar felt his heart pound. "You ordered wildfire beneath the city?" "Everywhere." Aerys shrieked, eyes gleaming fever-bright. "Let them choke on green flame. I will be reborn, phoenix from ash." Ser Jaime's knuckles whitened around Gilded Hill. Rhaegar studied him, then spoke softly. "Kingsguard swear to protect the king, but also the realm. My father is lost to madness. Will you join me, Ser Jaime, in safeguarding the innocents?" A moment held, taut as a drawn bowstring. Jaime's golden hair clung to his brow, sweat beaded beneath his helm. Then slowly he lifted his sword and laid it at Rhaegar's feet. "Forgive me," he whispered. "I cannot serve fire that spares no one." Aerys screamed, a chittering wail that echoed off pillars. He lunged to his feet, drawing a rust-flecked dagger from beneath his robes. Flames mirrored in his dilated pupils. "Oath breakers! All oath breakers!" Jaime stepped between father and son, but Rhaegar motioned him aside. He faced the king, and for an instant the hall seemed to constrict, as though the iron walls held their breath. "Father," Rhaegar said, voice trembling, "for the love you once bore me, surrender." Aerys' dagger trembled. His lips peeled back from yellowed teeth. "You will not rob me of my kingdom," he hissed and lunged. Steel flashed. Jaime moved faster than thought, parrying the dagger aside. A single twist, a single strike, and the Mad King's heart split beneath white satin. Blood sprayed, vivid against the Iron Throne. Aerys slumped, eyes wide, surprise etched upon his face. A hush fell so absolute it seemed the fires died. Only Jaime's ragged breathing stirred the air. He looked upon the corpse, sword still slick. "I am damned," he murmured. "You are absolved," Rhaegar replied, though his eyes filled with tears. He cradled his father's body, the warmth already fading. "You saved a city." But in the hush Jaime heard no absolution, only the echo of steel scraping iron. Within the Tower of the Hand, Elia Martell reclined upon a chaise, a wool blanket drawn to her collarbone. Candlelight gilded her dusky skin, accentuating dark shadows beneath restless eyes. Two nurses hovered, one shaking a tincture bottle, the other rocking infant Rhaenys whose soft mewling filled the chamber. When Rhaegar entered, Elia dismissed her attendants with a gentle gesture. "Tell me," she said, voice weak yet unwavering. He knelt beside her, clasped her delicate hand. "The war is over," he whispered. "My father is dead. By my command, the wildfire caches will be doused. Jaime has sworn allegiance to me, as have the City Watch and Lord Varys." Elia closed her eyes, relief mingling with sorrow. "And Prince Viserys? Still on Dragonstone, safe under Ser Willem Darry's care. I will send swift ships to bring him home." She opened her eyes again, shimmering with unshed tears. "And Lyanna Stark?" The question stabbed sharper than any blade. Rhaegar's fingers tightened around hers. "She is under guard in the south of the Crownlands. Her health is fragile." The half-truth clung to his tongue like ash. "I will see her when the realm no longer teeters." Elia studied him, reading unspoken confession. Yet instead of anger she only sighed, a soft exhale of resignation. "Keep our children safe. Let this crown mean peace, not fire." He bowed his head. "You have my solemn vow." News traveled on raven wings faster than horse. At Riverrun, Lord Hoster Tully wept to learn of his young son-in-law Robert's defeat and capture. At Winterfell, Eddard Stark stood on the battlements, snow melting in his hair, updating his sister's absence with trembling fingers upon parchment. Stannis Baratheon retreated to Storm's End, gaunt from siege and bitter with frustration. In the Vale, young Jon Arryn weighed his oaths to Robert against the threatened future of his house. Across the narrow sea, Illyrio Mopatus listened, plump fingers tapping at the table where dragon figurines stood like portents. For exiles breed dreams no victor can smother. In King's Landing, the coronation of Rhaegar Targaryen unfolded beneath an overcast sky. September musicians played softly. Incense rolled in fragrant waves. The 7 crystal lamps swayed overhead as the High Septon anointed the prince's brow with holy oils. When the crown of rubies and black iron settled upon Rhaegar's head, thousands knelt, their combined voice a single breath of "Long live the king." Yet for all the pomp, Rhaegar felt hollow. He had claimed the destiny glimpsed in ancient prophecies, yet lost something unnamed upon the banks of the Trident. The ghost of Robert Baratheon haunted the dungeons, bound but unbroken, and the memory of Aerys' last mad gaze lingered in every torchlit passage. A dragon reborn in grief, he feared his own reflection. The small council assembled 10 days later in the solar overlooking Blackwater Bay. The windows stood open, letting salt air mingle with parchment dust. Lord Varys glided like a silk-robed phantom to a cushioned seat. Pycelle shuffled in trailing scrolls. Jon Connington, newly named Hand, wore polished steel and a stern expression. Ser Barristan donned white armor, the cloak unstained at last. Lord Tywin Lannister arrived last, clad in crimson brocade, his arrival greeting no jest. "My lords," King Rhaegar began, "I have summoned you to bind this fractured realm. Lord Tywin, you shall return to Casterly Rock as my warden of the West. Keep the King's Road clear. Feed the towns that starved while armies marched." Tywin inclined his head, cold green eyes betraying neither pride nor discontent. "Grand Maester," Rhaegar continued, "send ravens to Winterfell, the Eyrie, and Storm's End, inviting them to a grand council here in 6 months' time. We must craft a charter that ensures grievances are addressed before they birth uprising." Pycelle dipped trembling quill to ink. "At once, your grace." Rhaegar then turned to Varys. "We will root out surviving pockets of rebels and burn no fields in the doing. Connington will lead royal inspection tours. I want justice, not retribution." "A delicate distinction," Varys murmured. "But necessary, I quite agree." The meeting lasted hours. They spoke of empty coffers, of pirates emboldened along the stepstones, of Riverland farms trampled into famine. Yet the heaviest matter remained unspoken until Tywin, leaning forward, asked, "And what of succession?" Rhaegar's heart thudded. "Aegon is my heir. Your firstborn by Princess Elia," Tywin noted, fingers steepled. Yet some whisper of a northern girl hidden in towers. Whisperers can be silenced, but not prophecy. Rhaegar's glance flicked to Varys, who only smiled. "Bastards have toppled kings. Better to dispel rumor with truth." The king rose, pacing toward the window where gulls wheeled over gray water. "Lyanna Stark is no bastard's whore," he murmured. "She is the crown I placed upon Winter's brow. But Aegon is Prince of Dragonstone. There need be no contest." Connington spoke gently, "The North may see betrayal rather than romance. Ned Stark is honorable, yet his bannermen crave vengeance." "I will ride north," Rhaegar said. "I will look Eddard Stark in the eyes and plead for peace." Tywin's brows climbed. A king departing his capital so soon after ascent? Dangerous. More dangerous to ignore half a realm, Rhaegar countered. "What good is a crown hammered from swords if no one wears it in trust?" No one answered. The sea crashed distantly. Rhaegar felt destiny like frost along his spine, a chill reminding him that dragons seldom know peace. The king's progress north began with a dawn procession through the Dragon Gate. Snow fell in fragile spirals, though it was barely autumn. Rhaegar rode at the head, clad in dark wool, Dawnfire's breath steaming. His retinue numbered but 200, knights of the King's Guard, Stark and Tully hostages taken in token goodwill, and a train of wagons laden with grain and coin to relieve war-struck villages. Elia remained in the Red Keep, convalescing, trusting her husband's promised return. Far across the realm, the Tower of Joy stood pale against a blood-red sky. Inside, Lyanna Stark labored in sheets drenched with sweat and dream. 3 Kingsguard watched the doors, sworn to protect the prince's secret. As her cries echoed through stone, Ser Arthur Dayne tightened hand on Dawn. A storm brewed far away, but its first raindrops would fall here. Rhaegar's cortege moved up the King's Road into lands still licking wounds. Trees splintered by axe lined the verge, villages half empty of young men. Small folk gathered to stare, unsure whether to bow or curse. The king dismounted often, speaking to cobblers, to smiths, to children who had never seen a dragon but bore scars of war all the same. He gave silver where roofs lay burning, he pressed gloved hand to frostbitten cheeks. Each act seeded fragile faith. Outside Harrenhal, the procession paused. The castle's blackened towers loomed like skeleton fingers against a graying sky. It was here Rhaegar had crowned Lyanna once, inadvertently sparking war. Now he walked alone across cracked flagstones, listening to ghostly winds swirl through empty halls. In the ruined throne room he knelt, palms pressed to cold marble. "Grant me wisdom," he whispered to intangible watchers, "for I have none left." Thunder rumbled as though old scions whispered back. In Winterfell's hall, Lord Eddard Stark stood before the heart tree reading the king's letter by torchlight. Each word bled onto his conscience. Rhaegar's vow of peace, his pledge to return Lyanna unopened by harm, his promise of restoration for northern families bereaved. Yet grief still scalded Ned's veins. Brandon Stark, Rhaegar Stark, countless bannermen, all dead. Robert in chains? Could a dragon's pledge outweigh that ledger of blood? "The northern lords will not abide," Maester Luwin cautioned. "They bay for vengeance. But if war resumes, more will die," Ned murmured. He looked up at red leaves rustling overhead. "If life is the cost of vengeance, what man will pay it?" "The Umbers," Luwin said. "The Flints, the Karstarks. All lost kin at the Trident." Ned clenched fist. "I will hear Rhaegar. If he comes in good faith, I must answer in kind." He thought of Kat's unborn child stirring within her womb, of winter winds thickening. "Let us pray ice can temper fire," while ravens winged north and south. King's Landing simmered beneath anxious calm. Queen Elia recovered strength slowly, yet rumors of her rival's imminent motherhood brewed in corridors. The Dornish guard grew restless. Varys' spiders whispered of Tywin's intrigues to secure a Lannister bride for Prince Aegon. The faith militant murmured of the Dragon King's sin in taking 2 wives, though no Septon dared speak polygamy aloud. Meanwhile, Robert Baratheon sat bound in a tower of the Red Keep, visited only by maesters. His wounds knit, but his fury did not abate. Though chains bit his wrists, Robert's voice boomed, rattling stones when he roared oaths against Targaryen tyranny. The city watch shifted nervously outside his cell, uncertain whether to cheer or cower. Ser Jaime Lannister, newly titled Lord Commander of the King's Guard, often passed that cell, hearing echoes of his own damnation in Robert's curses. Guilt clung like a second cloak. He asked himself daily whether the city's salvation outweighed the vows he had stained. In dreams, a Mad King's last gasp repeated, but each night the words changed: Oathbreaker, Kinslayer, Hero. He woke never knowing which voice rang true. Weeks passed. Rhaegar's progress reached the neck. Crannogmen emerged from marsh mist, offering eels and warnings. Northern hearts freeze harder than ice beneath grief, they told the king. Tread softly. He heeded them and left coin enough to feed halls through winter, but he sensed spears behind every reed. At Moat Cailin, the king met banners of House Mormont, House Hornwood, and House Reed. Their lords knelt, stiff-spined, uncertain. Rhaegar spoke plain. "I come to restore. I will not flay old wounds. Walk with me to Winterfell and judge truth with your own eyes." Some joined him, though many rode ahead to test Ned's resolve. Near the banks of the White Knife, a raven found Rhaegar bearing a single line. "She is delivered of a son, healthy." Lyanna had given birth. Joy and dread warred within him. Aegon had a brother now, one born of ice and fire. Prophecy's promise deepened, but so did dilemma. Would the realm abide twins of rival mothers? Would the North accept a child of dragonseed? He tucked the parchment into his cloak and rode on. Inside the Tower of Joy, Lyanna cradled a sleeping infant, skin fair, hair dark as midnight. Ser Arthur Dayne stood by the window, sunlight gilding his sword. "The prince will return soon," he assured her. "He will name the boy and present him to the realm." Lyanna smiled faintly. "He promised the name John for the songs," she whispered. "Simple, strong." Ser Arthur bowed his head. "A good name." But Lyanna's eyes clouded. "Does Queen Elia know?" "No," Dane said. "Not yet." Tears pricked her lashes. "Secrets breed dragons. I fear our love will birth flame no winter wind can quell." The wail of her babe swelled. She rocked him gently. "Hush, Jon, hush. The world is not yet ready for you." When at last Rhaegar's retinue crossed Winterfell's bridge, a hush settled. Snowflakes lofted Lee. Pale feathers. Ned Stark stood upon the steps of the great hall clad in simple gray, Longclaw at his hip. Behind him arrayed rows of northern lords. Galbart Glover, Carlin Karstark, Lord Wyman Manderly towering in ermine. Eyes burned with wary curiosity. Rhaegar dismounted. He dismissed his guard to the courtyard edge, making the long walk alone. "Lord Stark," he called, boots crunching snow. Ned inclined his head, though his jaw clenched. "Your Grace." The greeting held weight. Rhaegar stopped an arm's length away. "I come bearing peace." "Peace demands more than words," Ned answered. "My father and brother were murdered by the king you now succeed. My sister vanished under your banners." A gust swept between them, whirling snow. Rhaegar's voice caught. "I will account for every grief, repay every crime by coin, food, and justice. I will release your sister to your care, but she has given birth to my son. I beg you, judge not him for our sins." Shock rippled through the gathered lords. Ned's eyes widened, glistening. "Lyanna is alive?" "Alive," Rhaegar confirmed. "Though weakened by childbirth, she rests in the south, guarded by knights sworn to me and to her. She is free to return to you if she wills it." Silence reigned, broken only by distant ravens. Ned turned, grappling with impossible relief and tangled outrage. At last he looked back. "Bring her to Winterfell. Swear this under gods old and new, and I will counsel my bannermen to lay down swords." Rhaegar drew his blade and laid it flat upon his palms. Snow melted across Valyrian ripples, sending tendrils of steam skyward. "I swear by ice, fire, and all my blood," he said, voice carrying across the courtyard, "Lyanna Stark shall come to Winterfell unharmed. Let the gods punish me should I fail." Ned placed gloved fingers upon cold steel. Their gazes locked, and history shifted once more. News of peace negotiations spread like dawn. The Riverlords, exhausted, welcomed prospect of harvest under an unburning sky. Storm Lords burned with shame and fury. Stannis grit his teeth but prepared envoys. Dorne held its breath, Elia's kin disquieted by a northern rival. The Reach sent singers to craft new ballads extolling dragon mercy. In the capital, Queen Elia listened to those ballads and felt their honey coat the blade poised above her children's heads. She sent ravens to Doran and Sunspear, pleading for patience, for cunning. "I trust Rhaegar's heart," she wrote, "but sometimes hearts doom us faster than swords." Aegon toddled at her skirts, crowing at shadow plays. Rhaenys clutched a toy spear, fierce as Nymeria of old. Elia wondered if loving them enough could shield them from rumors that they were heirs only in part. Meanwhile, Robert Baratheon, still captive, received no word of Lyanna's survival nor Ned's rapport. Each day his cell seemed smaller, his temper sharper. One dusk the chain at his ankle snapped from its iron ring, whether by rust or hidden file none could say. Robert beat the lone guard unconscious, seized keys, and fled into labyrinth corridors. By moonrise, the crowned stag had vanished beyond the city walls, leaving embarrassment in his wake. Across the narrow sea, whispers bore his name to Sel's word ears. Winterfell hosted the king for a fortnight while ravens flapped between towers. Feasts tested dust-starved larders. Northern minstrels hesitated between dirges and jigs, uncertain which demanded coin. At the Long Able, Rhaegar spoke softly with Ned about the wall, about the old gods, about the stark words that seemed prophetically plain. Winter is coming. He apologized without flourish, recounting step by step how desire had eclipsed duty. Ned, in turn, spoke of vows and of days when choice seemed as narrow as a castle doorway. Gradually grudges thawed, not into friendship but wary cohabitation. When messengers arrived confirming Lyanna had embarked north escorted by Ser Arthur Dayne, hope ignited through Winterfell's corridors. Yet some northern lords balked at sharing hearth with a dragon's mistress. The Karstarks muttered of stolen honor. Lord Bolton's pale eyes gleamed. One night, tense debate flared in the great hall. Rhaegar rose from his seat, unarmed, and addressed them. "If my love has marred her name, let history say I bore the stain. Judge me, not her. Judge me, not the babe who knows no banner." His voice quavered, echoing off stone. Eyes met his, and in them warriors glimpsed weariness deeper than the snowflake pass. Some hearts softened, others hardened, but none left untouched. Lyanna arrived at last on a frost-shimmer dawn. The northern banners lined the courtyard. She rode within a covered wagon, Ser Arthur Dayne escorting. When she stepped down, Ned rushed forward, tears streaming, to seize her in trembling embrace. She laughed, breath pluming silver. In her arms, swaddled in gray wool, slept baby Jon, a tuft of dark hair curling on his brow. The sight wove awe into the murmuring crowd. Rhaegar approached, keeping respectful distance. Lyanna looked to him, eyes like dusk on winter lakes. For a moment silence reigned while snow sifted between them. Then she stepped aside, presenting their son. Rhaegar's breath caught. He touched the child's cheek with reverent fingers. "I had a dream," Lyanna whispered, "of a dragon with two heads, forged in storm and snow, singing a song of steel." Snowflakes quickened in the half-light, swirling around mother and king. "Name him, beloved." Rhaegar looked to Ned, then to the northern banners flapping in icy wind, then skyward where pale sun tried to pierce cloud. "His name is Aemon Snow, for wisdom and winter," he declared softly, though his mind whispered another prophecy of a prince that was promised. But names held power, and for now he forged a bridge of ice and fire. Northern eyes watched, measuring. Peace did not come solely through vows and names. Bandits roamed riverlands, Tywin's gold flowed to mercenaries gathering on Crackclaw Point, Queen Elia's maids whispered of poison in Dornish wine. The faith of the Seven debated an edict condemning polygamy. In dark crypts beneath the Red Keep, wildfire jars still waited, undiscovered caches keyed to sparks of curiosity. And somewhere in the mazes of Lys, Robert Baratheon bargained his future for ships, ale, and a chance to reclaim what he deemed stolen. Back at Winterfell, Rhaegar convened a council of lords, both dragon and direwolf. He proposed a pact, northern autonomy preserved, but the north would foster Prince Aegon each summer, while Princess Rhaenys would spend winters at Winterfell, learning old gods as well as new. A host of gasps answered the boldness, but Rhaegar pressed on. "Let our children grow as siblings of two realms," he declared, "so their hearts will know no schism." Ned stroked his beard, eyes lingering on Lyanna and baby Aemon. "I will consider," he said, reflecting on generations yet unborn. On the southern road returning toward King's Landing, Rhaegar rode beside Lyanna with Jon Connington a few lengths ahead as outrider. The air smelled of autumn leaves decaying, of cold earth already dreaming of snow. Lyanna watched golden forests slip by, her son dozing against her chest. "Will Elia forgive us?" she asked softly. Rhaegar exhaled mist. "She has a kindness that surpasses my worth. But forgiveness is not owed, it must be earned." His gaze drifted to distant horizon where Dragonstone's silhouette would one day rise like memory from sea haze. "I must be king for all, or I will be king of Ash." Night fell. They made camp in an abandoned sept whose stained glass windows shattered long ago. Moonlight cascaded through jagged panes, painting shards of color on cracked tiles. Rhaegar sat by the cold altar, composing verses to the music of distant wolves. Lyanna approached, enwrapping a cloak about them both. "Sing," she urged. He sang softly, a lullaby of old Valyria, voice low enough not to wake the babe. In gloom it seemed a dragon's heart broke open, spilling melody across rubble. Lyanna closed her eyes, leaning against his shoulder. Above, a single star burned through a ragged window, solitary sentinel of promises yet unfulfilled. At King's Landing, Queen Elia welcomed Lyanna with a tilt of chin that bespoke both courage and dread. The Red Keep thrummed with watchers, Dornish guards gripping spears, Lannister men fingering hilts, Varys smiling like a spider who knows every tremor on its web. Rhaegar stood between worlds, presenting wives to one another. Elia offered a curtsy that pained her fragile knees. Lyanna bent deeper, acknowledging seniority. Aemon gurgled in Lyanna's arms while Aegon toddled near, curious eyes bright. Rhaenys hid behind her mother's skirts, peeking at the northern she-wolf. In that moment, something delicate sprouted, not friendship yet, but recognition of shared fate. They were queens of a realm stitched by sacrifice. That night, Rhaegar summoned his council. He proposed an edict granting Lyanna a title of Princess of Winter, her children placed behind Aegon in succession. Voices raised. Tywin balked, Barristan cautioned, Varys measured. But Elia, pale yet resolute, spoke, "Let it be writ. So long as my son is heir and my daughter secure, the realm may yet survive two mothers' love." Tywin's lips thinned. Love rarely governs peacefully. But he withdrew objections for the moment. Months passed in fragile calm. Harvest wagons rolled. Refugees returned to charred villages, coaxing new sprouts from blackened soil. In the capital, festivals resumed, mummers playing tragedies of mad kings and triumphant princes, children chasing dragon kites across market squares. The small folk began to say King Rhaegar listened, that he walked among them disguised in plain wool, that he paid coin for new roofs from his own purse. Whether true mattered less than belief. Yet storm clouds brewed beyond horizon. Across the sea, the Golden Company received a raven from Storm's End signed by Stannis, offered gold, steel, and a crownless king. Far north at Eastwatch, rangers spoke of dead things shifting in haunted forests. Southward, whispers of Greyjoy ambition slithered through taverns. And beneath the Red Keep, wildfire still glowed toxic green behind locked doors, marking the boundary of human folly. In the Tower of the Hand, Lyanna and Elia sat together one rain-specked afternoon, embroidering dragon sigils onto tiny tunics while their sons slept in adjacent cradles. Elia pricked her finger, a bead of blood blossoming. She watched it soak into white linen. "We mend cloth," she murmured, "but who mends kingdoms?" Lyanna looked toward the window where gulls wheeled through mist. "Those who dare to love them, perhaps. Or those who can endure them." Her needle flashed, braver than steel. On the anniversary of the Trident, Rhaegar summoned all great lords to King's Landing for a grand moot. The dragon banners draped streets, the Seven's flame encircled the September, casks of arbor gold flowed. Lords of North, West, Reach, Vale, Dorne, Stormlands, and the Isles gathered under uneasy truce, each seeking reward or redress. Rhaegar addressed them in the dragon pit, standing upon ancient stones where dragons once slept. "My father's reign was shadow and wildfire. I vow mine shall be dawn." His voice carried across echoing vaults. "Yet dawn requires every house to lift torches. I ask tribute not of coin but of conscience. Swear the children will not pay debts born of father's pride. Swear to send them as pages, as fosterlings, north and south, so they may grow strangers to hatred." Some cheered, others murmured. Lord Eddard Stark stepped forward, offering son Robb as page to Dragonstone and to the Citadel in turn. Lord Mace Tyrell pledged his second son to Winterfell. Bit by bit, trust began to stack like stones in a wall. But beyond that wall, cold things stirred. In late autumn, a raven arrived from White Harbor. Ships sighted bearing golden swords. Rhaegar frowned, recognizing the Golden Company's sigil. Days later, another message from Gulltown. Unmarked galleasses offshore. Stannis Baratheon's signature surfaced upon intercepted contracts. War had not been extinguished, only banked to embers. Rhaegar ordered fleets dispatched, but the Royal Navy lay weakened. He turned to Lord Tyrell, who promised ships in exchange for favorable trade charters. He turned to Lord Baelish, newly appointed Master of Coin, who conjured loans from bravos at cutthroat rates. He turned to Jon Cunnington, who rode for the Stormlands to confront Stannis with royal authority backed by Stark infantry. Yet every solution birthed new complexities, and in corridors Varys whispered that unseen hands directed plots aiming finally at the crown's fragile heart. Late one evening, Elia collapsed during supper, blood upon her linen. Healers rushed her to chambers. Rhaegar knelt beside her bed, voice cracked. "Poison? Exhaustion?" The maesters muttered of fragile constitution long taxed. Through fever she clutched his sleeve. "Keep them safe," she gasped. "All of them. Promise." "I promise," he whispered, tears falling. She slept, breath shallow. Night stretched long as a sword's shadow. At dawn she opened eyes clear as desert sky and whispered, "Not yet," as though death relented a moment longer. Winter crept despite southern warmth. Rhaegar stood upon the Red Keep's highest battlement, wind tugging his cloak. Below, the city lights flickered like stars fallen to earth. Lyanna joined him, cloak lined in dire wolf fur. "The realm loves you," she said, "yet love can turn." He nodded. "I will unite them, or I will perish trying." In distant memory, a harp strummed a chord so pure it pierced prophecy's veil. He heard it still. Dragons were reborn of song, not of death, he told himself. Yet sometimes songs required sacrifice, and he wondered whose verse must end for the music to carry. Far away, north of the wall, snow gusted across abandoned watchtowers. A horn blew, low and mournful, thrice. Night gathered, and death marched unseen, indifferent to thrones, queens, or the fragile peace of men. Rhaegar watched dawn's first light paint the clouds rose gold. He breathed deep. If winter came, he would meet it wielding both ice and fire. The kingdom he shaped from broken blades might yet prove steel enough or shatter beneath the weight of prophecy. But in the hush before sunrise, he allowed himself one heartbeat of fragile hope. He turned to Lyanna, eyes weary yet determined. "Come," he said. "There is work yet, and songs still unsung." They descended the tower together, into corridors lit by flickering torches. where children dreamed of dragons soaring unbroken across skies yet uncharted, and where the next verse of Westeros waited to be written in ink, in blood, in the heartbeat of kings who dared to chase dawn. The deep midwinter moon hung low over the Blackwater, its pale halo paling further beneath wreaths of chimney smoke that coiled like sluggish ghosts above King's Landing. Somewhere in the labyrinth of streets below, a lone lute struck a mournful chord, a minor key lament to colder times. Yet within the solar of Rhaegar's holdfast the air felt oppressively warm. Braziers glowed, perfumed logs spat sparks, and every candle stood guard against the night as though darkness itself were the enemy. Rhaegar Targaryen stood at the map table alone, elbows planted on weather-curled parchment. 1,000 painted banners marched across that vellum, lions over Casterly Rock, roses on the Mander, krakens in the Iron Seas. But his gaze drifted north toward the stylized wall etched in trembling blue ink, beyond which the cartographer had drawn nothing save white blankness. He traced a gloved finger across that void, recalling Maester Aemon's students' letters from Castle Black, rumors of dead things that would not stay dead, of shadows moving against moonlit drifts. Men who mocked such tales did so because they lived beneath roofs and behind guards that dark-cared little for walls built of disbelief. A soft rustle broke his reverie. Lyanna slipped inside, gray cloak drawn tight, long black hair plaited in the northern fashion. She studied him from the threshold, candle flame reflecting in her eyes. "You have stared at that map until dawn once already this week," she murmured. "I seek patterns," he answered without looking up, "but they bleed together like ink and rain." She stepped forward, laying her palm atop his. "You need sleep more than you need patterns." "I need peace," he corrected gently. "And time runs thin." Lyanna's smile held sorrow. "You are king of a realm that does not yet know how to live without war. Peace is a new tongue, we must teach them each word." Rhaegar covered her hand with his other. Would that language lesson suffice? Stannis brings Sel's words from the east, Robert stirs lords in the Stormlands to rise in his name, Tywin counts dragons in his vaults and waits for blood to cheapen again. Every raven carries a threat. He exhaled. And still the cold marches. Lyanna's fingers tightened. Then we meet them all, cold and warm alike, with fire and with hope. She glanced over her shoulder before adding, "Elia asked for you. The maesters have brewed dream wine, but she refuses until you come." Guilt flared. He had spent too many nights consumed by scrolls and strategy while Elia fought fever in lonely chambers. "I will go," he promised. "Stay with Aemon or bring him, perhaps a babe's laugh will charm the darkness." Lyanna nodded and retreated into corridors hushed by rush-covered stone. When her footsteps faded, Rhaegar reached to the candle nearest Dorne on the map. One careful breath he snuffed the flame, leaving the corner dark. Then he bent, kissed the ink-drawn wall, and whispered, "Hold." Queen Elia lay propped upon down pillows, cheeks wan, but her dark eyes still smoldered like dusk above Sunspear's dunes. Rhaegar entered and felt the room lighten, though no fresh torch was lit. Aegon dozed curled at her side, silver-blonde head upon her arm. Rhaenys paced the carpet with a wooden spear, staging mock duels against invisible foes and winning each with triumphant whoops. Elia bade the girl hush, then smiled faintly at her husband. "You look older," she said. Her voice rasped but held playfulness. "Have you hidden fresh silver threads beneath that black mane?" He knelt by the bed. "Silver is in fashion among kings, I hear. Then you should be the envy of all courts before long." She reached to brush knuckles along his jaw. "But I'd see you gray and wrinkled only after the realm is mended, not during." He covered her hand with his. "The maesters say the chill will ease as the moon turns." "They say many comforting things," she replied, gaze drifting to the window where frost filmed the glass. "But I listen more to this city." She groaned still. "The small folk fear prices that climb like spiders, they fear sell sales, they fear iron-born raiders stalking the stepstones, they fear the hush in the Red Keep each time the wildfire carts roll by." Her brow creased. "Is it true you mean to dig up every hidden cache?" "I mean to drag those green demons into daylight and pour them into the sea," he said. "If I cannot rip madness from memory, I can at least rid the city of its fangs." Rhaenys halted her campaign to crawl onto the coverlet, thrusting her spear at her father. "Will you slay the sea monsters too?" He ruffled her raven curls. "If they misbehave." Elia's smile tightened. "You speak as though danger sleeps only in jars and saltwater. But men bring wildfire in their hearts. Tywin hosts tourneys again, generous purses fattening lesser lords who bled for Robert. Gifts breed loyalties faster than fear. Gold can buy blades, Rhaegar agreed. But hearts? Elia laughed softly, though it ended in cough. "Hearts have always had a price, my love. Only fools pretend otherwise. She studied him a long moment. You have a good heart. Guard it. Others might wish to own it. Her gaze flicked towards the doorway where Lyanna appeared cradling infant Aemon. If Elia felt sting at the sight, she masked it. Lyanna curtsied, lowering hood to reveal proud stark features softened by motherhood. She laid the sleeping babe beside Aegon. The two boys nestled instinctively, breaths sinking as though they had known each other beyond this life. Rhaenys leaned close, poking her new brother's round cheek. He makes little snarfling noises, she reported solemnly. Like a puppy. Lyanna laughed, low and musical. Then perhaps he will grow to guard you as Ghost guards your cousin Robb. Elia watched the children with an expression Rhaegar could not read, wonder and wistfulness braided tight. At length she said, may they never know the taste of war. Beyond those gentle chambers the city simmered. By day, shipwright hammers rang in the naval yard as half-finished galleys took shape, sleek hulls meant to chase pirates and intercept sails. By night, torches flickered in Flea Bottom where bread still cost thrice the silver it had before the Trident, and destitute veterans bartered old mail shirts for a skin of wine to numb phantom pains. The Faith militant patrolled in twin files, 7-pointed stars glinting. Their high septon had preached a fiery sermon declaring polygamy a mortal stain, yet publicly chastising violence against royal persons. The contradiction left the cobblestones humming with debate, and more than one sept door was daubed with crude dragons belching flames. In the Red Keep's shadow, small council sessions lengthened until Ravenlight. Tywin Lannister seldom attended in person now, citing matters in the West, but his letters came thick with suggestions. Raise tariffs on Myrish lace, whose traders owed him coin. Grant Storm's end to a Lannister cousin loyal to the crown. Appoint Kevan as master of laws. Varys presented each missive with silken gravity. Jon Connington answered by quenching sealing wax in cold wine. Lord Tywin assumes the crown's purse is his personal mint. Connington growled one evening. We cannot indebted ourselves further to Casterly Rock. Baelish's quicksilver smile flashed. Then we find others happy to hold our notes. The Iron Bank will fund galleys in exchange for docking rights. Tyrosh will purchase next year's will clip at generous advance. Ser Barristan Selmy frowned. Tyroshi dies do not wash clean. We may stain our honor bargaining with free cities who arm our foes. Honor and solvency seldom sup from the same bowl, Littlefinger quipped. Rhaegar raised palm for silence. We serve the realm, not our purses. We will borrow only what grain we can repay in peace and no more. Tywin may wait. His violet gaze slid to Varys. As for the Sellsword Company edging the stepstones, do your little birds confirm Stannis' coin behind them? Varys folded plump hands in his lap. Whispers flutter, your grace. Ships sail from Lys and Mere flying no colors, yet muster near storm's end at twilight. The Golden Company's elephant sigils were glimpsed, albeit fleetingly. His bald head tilted. I suspect Ser Stannis has wagered much on foreign steel. Connington's mailed fist struck the table. We can crush them before they land if our fleet sails at once. Give me command. Baelish twirled a quill. A valiant idea, my lord hand, but we have half an autumn to provision the hulls Tyrell promises. And sailors demand coin. Then we sail with what we have, Connington retorted. Selmy inclined head. An incomplete fleet may provoke a battle we cannot win. Better to strike with certainty. Rhaegar considered. We will compromise. Lord Paxter Redwine's vassals may lend Dromans already crewed. I will send ravens to the arbor. Meanwhile, Ser Barristan will ride to Storm's End beneath a flag of parley bearing a royal warrant inviting Stannis to court. Connington will remain to oversee fleet preparations. Connington's jaw flexed. Obey he would, but frustration burned in his eyes. Varys's parchment-thin voice slipped into silence. What of Robert Baratheon? The question tasted of iron. Since his daring escape, rumors had scattered like seeds in high wind. Robert glimpsed in Tyrosh brothels, in Braavosi dueling pits, aboard a pirate cog off Estermont. None confirmed. Rhaegar clasped hands behind his back. If Robert returns with sword in hand, we will treat him as traitor. Should he return with peace, we will hear him. Littlefinger bowed. Peace is seldom proportionate to a man's thirst for ale and vengeance. In the months that followed, winter's first real teeth sank across Westeros. The neck flooded until causeways vanished. Ravens arrived from Moat Cailin pleading for salt pork. The Vale closed mountain passes beneath avalanche risk. Along the narrow sea, storms hurled towers of froth so high sailors swore giants strode the surf. Amid that roaring cold, Ser Barristan and Selmy journeyed to Storm's End accompanied by 24 knights in white cloaks and the High Septon's envoy, a gaunt Septon named Maribold, whose presence gave the delegation nominal holiness. Storm's End rose bleak and implacable above a churning gray-green sea. Inside its drum-shaped keep Stannis received them in a torchlit hall smelling of salt and old fury. His jaw, ever hard, seemed carved of black basalt now, his eyes burned feverish with sleepless purpose. "You come to preach surrender?" he rasped at Barristan, voice like gulls over breakers. "The stag bends knee to no dragon." Barristan set aside helm. "I come offering audience in King's Landing where grievances may be aired without blood." "Grievances cannot fatten starving men," Stannis said. "The king taxes our coasts, starves my people, all while pardoning traitors who stole his sister and killed my brother's dream. The king releases levies back to fields, forgives debts, rebuilds fleets that shield you from pirates," Barrist encountered. "He honors Lady Lyanna and ensures Robert lives should he care to stand before the throne rather than crawl beneath it." Stannis' lips thinned. "Robert will return. He is no crawler. When he lands, we shall smash every false vow with his hammer." He leaned close. "Tell your king I will bend knee only once Robert commands it." Selmy's shoulders sagged. "And if Robert does not? Then the storm will swallow the dragon whole." Outside, thunder answered, while bolts of lightning flung spiderwebs across Storm's End's parapets. Far to the west, Lord Tywin hosted a wedding feast at Casterly Rock unmatched for splendor since the Age of Heroes. 1,000 guests dined on peacock baked in gold leaf and unicorn ribs glazed with sunset-hued sauce. Bards sang of House Lannister's unbreakable line as bright-eyed nephews toasted new alliances. Young Joffrey Lannister married to Lady Ermazond Hayford, an heiress whose crownland estate commanded riverside toll rights. Outwardly the match seemed minor. In truth, it placed Lannister gold at the king's doorstep disguised as dowry. During the 12th course, Kevin Lannister bent to his brother. "The king will note your absence at council again." Tywin dabbed wine from lip with cloth of gold. "He may note what he wishes. Action outweighs note-taking. You move pieces upon his board." Tywin's eyes glimmered under candelabra. "I simply remind the dragon what metal coins are struck from." Back in the capital, Elia walked gardens wrapped in shawls, arm hooked through Lyanna's. Winter roses, unnatural in the south, had been coaxed from glass hothouses as a birthday gift for the northern princess. Their sapphire petals glowed beneath lanterns. Elia plucked one, inhaled its cool spice. "Do you miss Winterfell's snows?" Lyanna smiled. "Some nights I dream of silence so deep you can hear your blood." She glanced at towers looming beyond hedges. "Here even the moon makes noise." Elia laughed, then pressed palm to ribcage as shortness tugged. Lyanna steadied her. "You should rest." "I have rested enough for 2 lifetimes," Elia whispered. "I will not waste breath hiding indoors." Lyanna's concern lingered. When the maesters speak of Dornish blood running hot, they forget how fragile flame can be. Elia brushed hair from her face, eyes sharp. "Fragile does not mean broken." She reached to tuck a rose behind Lyanna's ear. "Nor does wild mean untamable." In that scented hush, solidarity bloomed, sisterhood wrought from shared burdens heavier than swords. Autumn waned. Reports from the fleet filtered in. Red wine galleys had joined royal carracks, sailors drilled ballista crews by torchlight. Yet still the Golden Company lingered across the sea as if awaiting some secret trumpet. Rhaegar paced decks, cloaked in sea mist, memory tugging him to the stepstones where Valyrian ruins jutted like dragon teeth. Legends claimed fireworms nested there. He half wished one might rise to scorch Stannis' ambitions before the dragons of old were forced to rouse. One dawn a black-winged raven alighted, bearing Connington's seal. The Kraken stirs. Pike sends raiders toward Fair Isle, Tywin's domain. A second scroll followed within days. Riverlands report raids as far as Seaguard. Greyjoys. They smelt weakness whenever mainland lords quarreled. Rhaegar summoned his council. "We cannot fight 2 wars, one against Sel's words, one upon seas to the west." Baelish offered, hire the Volantene corsairs to harry the Ironborn. Varys shook head. "Pirates join whichever side coins them heavier. Better to answer the Kraken boldly so others think twice." Selmy said, "Give me 500 knights, 36 galleys. We'll put Pike to the torch." Connington, newly returned, slammed gauntlet on table. "And leave the Golden Company free to land unopposed?" Voices clashed until Rhaegar lifted hand. "We meet threat where it bites deepest. The Ironborn prey on innocence. I will not let small folk pay for Sel's word posturing." His eyes fixed on Connington. "You will sail west with Selmy." Take Lord Harlaw's head if he shows. Connington bristled. He wanted Stannis, but bowed. As you command. Turning to Baelish, Rhaegar continued, secure loans for more powder, but no interest above 4%. Offer Bravo stakes in future harbor tariffs. Littlefinger's brows climbed, but he bowed low. As your grace wills. At meeting's end, Varys lingered. Your grace, he murmured, a spider climbs unseen in Dorne. My whispers call him the shadow of the spear. He rallies Sunspear's common folk with tales of a rightful queen spurned by northern witchcraft. Rhaegar's shoulders stiffened. Who? A priest of the Lord of Light, once a pit-fighter. Charismatic. Have him watched, but not silenced, the king decided. No martyr songs. He exhaled. I will ride to Dorne after the Ironborn are checked, mend fears before they fester. And if your absence emboldens Stannis? Rhaegar's half-smile held weary resolve. Then let him chase shadows while I chase hearts. Snow fell on King's Landing for the first time in 7 years, soft, tentative flakes that melted upon roofs yet left children squealing. To many it felt omen. Dragons had reigned near 4 centuries, never had snow graced the capital in such measure save days before the Trident. Old crones muttered that the gods were balancing scales. On the night of that snowfall, 2 cloaked figures made their way along the outer battlements above the snow-dusted godwood. One was Jaime Lannister, gold hair tucked beneath hood, the other, a grim ranger of the Night's Watch named Qhorin Half-Hand, recently arrived on raven's wings bearing dire warnings. They rise in the far north, Sayre, Qhorin rasped, scarred cheek catching moonsilver. Dead men walking. Wildlings flee south, screaming of blue eyes. Jaime frowned. The king has read your letters. Letters carry no chill. Only eyes that be seen. They paused at a tower door. Why tell me? Jaime asked. Because you slew a king to save a city, Qhorin said. If you carry that burden still, you may yet wield it again for all men. Jaime's hand brushed sword pommel. I swore to protect the king. Qhorin's gaze bore into him. And the realm. Remember. He strode away, cloak blending into white. Jaime watched, heart hammering. He recalled Aerys' final shriek, Rhaegar's tears, his own tarnished vow. Snow danced before his eyes, each flake a memory. News of the Ironborn assault struck like a cracked bell. Fair Isle's docks aflame, Great White grieving mainland shores. Lord Jason Lannister's fleet sunk off case. Yet Connington and Selmy met them with dragon banners streaming. In a swirling melee beneath the shadow of the sea tower of Old Wyke, Barrist and Clove threw Reaver ranks to challenge Victarion Greyjoy himself. Axe met blade under pale lightning, sparks flew like fireflies. Victarion, bull-necked and brutal, swung wide, Selmy ducked, thrust, and silvered the Kraken's mailed arm. Connington's knights formed a shield wall, half red, half white, and advanced until the Ironborn line shattered against it like waves upon cliffs. Still, the price was dear, 40 knights fell, 3 galleys burnt, and the war drums of Pike echoed yet. But smallfolk tales soon flew faster. That dragons had come not to plunder but to defend fisherfolk, that Rhaegar's men paid silver for storehouses they commandeered, that Ser Barrist and spared those who surrendered even after losing kin. Word reshaped fear into grudging admiration. Back in the capital, Tywin's missive arrived praising the king's unexpected swiftness, yet bristling that the Connington offensive had sailed without consulting Casterly Rock. Rhaegar wrote in reply, your coasts are realm's coasts, defense is no one man's privilege. Then he dispatched a second letter addressed privately to Lady Cersei, inviting her to foster Rhaenys for a season in the west, so the blood of lion and dragon may learn each other's grace. A gamble, a golden olive branch. Winter deepened. The wall sent ravens bearing blackened pages where ink froze mid-stroke, yet one line always came through, we need men. Rhaegar announced a royal levy not of soldiers but of volunteers to aid the Watcha. Criminals offered pardon, second sons offered chance at honor. It stirred controversy. Lords fretted the gold cloaks might empty jails and free cutthroats upon the realm instead. But when Aemon Snow, now toddling, placed a tiny carved dire wolf upon the council table during debate, murmuring ice safe, even hardened cynics felt hearts thaw. In late first moon of the new year, a Braavosi galley named Maiden's Melody docked at the king's gate. Its hold bore silks, its deck boasted one battered passenger wrapped in a stained cloak that reeked of sour wine. Robert Baratheon, leaner yet still broad as an oak, stepped onto the quay and bellowed for ale loud enough to draw the harbormaster's guard. When they informed him the city belonged to Rhaegar's peace, he grinned a wolfish grin. Then let's see how peacefully he greets an uninvited guest. Within hours the Red Keep buzzed. Connington counseled chains, Selmy counseled audience, Varys counseled caution. Rhaegar heard them all, then ordered Robert escorted to the throne room at dawn under full ceremony. That dawn, Robert trudged through cavernous doors flanked by gold cloaks. His once grand warhammer hung at hip, dented. He looked up at the iron throne where Rhaegar sat in simple black surcoat. Lyanna and Elia watched from gallery, one with breath held, the other with children clutched close. Rhaegar descended 3 steps. "Lord Robert," he said quietly. "You come to finish our duel?" Robert's blue eyes burned, but not with bloodlust alone. "I buried too many friends to bury more." He glanced at Lyanna, pain raw. "I came for truth." Rhaegar nodded. "Ask." Robert's shoulders sagged a fraction. "Did she love you?" Silence thickened. Lyanna stepped forward, voice ringing clear. "I chose him," she said. "No kidnappings, no sorcery. My choice and mine alone." Robert closed eyes as though hammered. When he opened them, tears stood unshed. "Then I rode to war for a lie." "No," Rhaegar said. "You rode for loyalty. That is no sin." He extended hand. "Ride now for life." Robert stared at that hand. Hall murmurs rustled like reeds. At length the Storm Lord took the offered wrist, grip calloused, and bent knee as he once swore he never would. "For Lyanna's honor," he muttered, voice cracking. Cheers erupted, skepticism hissed in corners. But in that kneeling moment, one of Westeros's deepest rifts began to stitch. It did not heal overnight. Some Storm Lords refused Robert's capitulation. They rode to Stannis, urging rebellion. Stannis's sellswords prepared to sail, buoyed by fresh deserters from the Reach offended by Dornish favor. The field of peace grew crowded with seeds of future wars. And then, the wall sent one final raven flown on trembling wings and collapsed at the king's solar floor, dead of cold before sunrise. Its scroll bore but 3 words inked in a shaking hand. "The dead come." Rhaegar's council gathered at once. Jaime, newly returned from a confidential mission to Winterfell, unsheathed steel and laid it across map. "I saw a white myself," he confessed, voice low. Blue eyes, silent as hatred, cleaved in 2 before it fell. Fire made sure. Shock rippled. Connington cursed. Baelish whispered, "Dead men pay neither taxes nor tariffs." Lyanna clutched Aemon. Elia pressed Aegon close. Rhaegar stood. "Summon every great house. The realm must ride as one." Tywin's reply arrived days later. "We will stand when the North proves threat real. Gold must guard gold." In Dorne, the shadow of the spear preached that the night's chill was punishment for dragon sin. In the Reach, Mace Tyrell weighed harvests against marching. In the Isles, Euron Greyjoy returned from exile wearing a red priest's smile and promising God-killing miracles. The board no longer showed lines of ink, it showed storm fronts of destiny colliding. Rhaegar called his queens to the holdfast chapel beneath a ceiling painted with the 7. Candlefire flickered across 3 faces bound by circumstance, Elia's steadfast warmth, Lyanna's fierce calm, and his own reflection in stained glass, dragon and man. "I will ride north," he told them. "With knights and with wildfire turned to defense, not madness. With maesters and singers, for even on the brink of dark, hope must have a voice." He cupped Elia's cheek. "You will rule in my stead with Robert and Connington to counsel." He took Lyanna's hand. "Guard our children as pack guards pups." Lyanna squeezed his fingers. "Bring back the dawn." Elia kissed him, tears mingling with resolve. "And return alive, for the dawn needs a sun." Weeks later, gongs rang atop the Dragon Gate as departure loomed. Thousands thronged to watch. Rhaegar mounted Dawnfire wearing armor of plain steel, a sunrise-shaped ruby glinting at his throat, the river ruby Robert's hammer once cracked. At his flank rode Robert bearing antler helm newly reforged. He had sworn to stand by the dragon's side against this foe none could deny. Ser Jaime wore white cloak, Oathkeeper forged anew from Eddard's gift of ice. He would test new vows in truest fire. Behind them trotted squires bearing banners of stark dire wolf, rose, lion, kraken, trout. Though not all those houses had yet mustered, many had sent token riders to watch and judge. As horns sounded, a hush fell more solemn than any afterwa. Or triumph. For this was no march of conquest, it was a march into myth. Mothers pressed babes to breast, murmuring prayers. Mummers ceased jests. Even the rats beneath gutters paused, whiskers twitching. Through the king's gate they rode, clatter of hooves swallowed by fresh snowfall. Rhaegar did not look back. What was behind was memory, what waited ahead was the marrow of prophecy. Ice lay north, fire in his veins, and the great song of the world poised upon a single breathtaking note. The snowflakes turned from silver to red as dawn broke behind them, staining sky and armor alike. Some said it was omen of blood, others promise of rebirth. But to the king who once played a harp of silver strings beside the Trident's hush, it sounded like the first chord of a ballad not yet written, one whose ending would decide whether any soul, great or small, would live to sing come spring. He spurred Dawnfire into the whitening road. Knights followed, banners snapped, and the gates of the south closed upon what was left of peace. Ahead loomed the wall, stark against pale sky, and beyond it the long night that had waited generations for the reckoning of dragons. The song traveled with them, whispered by steel, breathed by men, fluttered by banners, and though none could hear every note, all felt its gravity. For in that song of ice and fire, every heart in Westeros now held a single fragile refrain: survive. And somewhere far to the north, where snow swirled in endless dark, blue eyes opened in ancient skulls, and shapes like men yet not men turned south toward the warmth, hungry for the music they meant to silence forever. The wall loomed white and impossible, a colossal blade of ice cleaving sky from land, and as Rhaegar Targaryen's army crested the last ridge of the King's Road's frozen terminus, a hush swept through the ranks that no order could break. Thousands of mailed shoulders sagged in awe beneath banners rhymed with frost, dire wolf gray, lion gold, rose green, kraken black, and, highest, the three-headed red dragon of House Targaryen. The chill gnawed through plate and ring and linen alike, but deeper still gnawed the unspoken question: what enemy demanded a king lead so vast a host beyond civilization's edge? Rhaegar reigned Dawnfire beside Lord Eddard Stark atop a snow-plastered rise overlooking Castle Black. Black stone towers jutted like spearheads from the foot of the wall, their smoke plumes tiny against the Leviathan above. Ned's gray eyes never left the ice. Even now he murmured, "I forget its size until I see it anew." Rhaegar's breath steamed. "It looks like the bones of some sleeping god." Ned managed a tight smile. "Let us hope the god stays sleeping." They descended to the courtyard where Lord Commander Jeor Mormont awaited with what remained of the Night's Watch. Barely 800 black cloaks all told, half of them old or maimed. Corran Halfhand stood near, face a weathered map of scars, and beside him two wildling envoys in furs watched warily, a tall spearwoman with auburn braids and a lean, hawk-eyed man who called himself Tormund Giant's Bane. Mormont greeted the king with a curt bow. "Your Grace." "We prayed for men," the gods answered with legions. Rhaegar dismounted and clasped the old bear's gauntlet. "The realm is one realm. Your fight is ours." Behind them, Robert Baratheon swung down from his charger, stamping numb feet. "And what fight is that, Lord Commander?" "Your letters named no foe a mortal man can trust." The wildling woman stepped forward. "Because mortal men quiver like babes when told the dead walk." Gasps rippled. Some southern knights reached for sword hilts. Rhaegar raised a hand. "No swords," he said. "Not here." "Speak plainly, spearwife." "I am Ygritte of the Free Folk," she declared, chin lifted. "We've seen halls of ice-filled corpses blue-eyed and silent till the night comes. We've watched mates rise after death and kill their own kin." Her voice faltered only at the memory. "If your southling ears canna swallow that, then choke when winter's hand closes round your throats." Tormund thumped his chest. "Aye. The Cold Ones march on Mance Raiders' camp this very moon. The king beyond the wall seeks passage south. Let us through the gate or we're all dead men." Murmurs became shouts. Lord Rowan cursed, wildling trickery. Ser Flemont Brax snarled that no savage would cross the wall alive. Jon Connington's hand twitched toward dagger. Ned Stark stepped between factions. "Let the Lord Commander speak," he barked, voice steel. Jeor Mormont rested knuckles on the pommel of Longclaw. "Reports we cannot ignore, my lords. Patrols vanish, game flees south, and just last night 2 rangers returned frost blue, soulless, cut down only by fire." He eyed Rhaegar. "The choice is simple. Bar the wildlings and fight 2 enemies, or grant them refuge and face one." Robert's nostrils flared. "You'd unleash thousands of raiders upon the north?" Rhaegar replied, "We unleash them southward under escort where they can neither raid nor die, turning into fodder for this cold army." A hush followed. The wind keened against ice. At length Ned spoke. "The Umber's man-last hearth, the Karstarks hold Carhold. If part of the free folk are housed in those lands under guest right until winter breaks, we gain watchmen who know the wild better than our rangers." Lord Karstark bristled but bit his tongue under Ned's flinty stare. Rhaegar squared shoulders. "So be it. I, Rhaegar of House Targaryen, in the name of all 7 kingdoms, grant the free folk passage south under escort and protection of northern lords, provided they lay down arms and swear guest right until winter's end." He turned to the wildling pair. "Bear witness and carry terms to Mance Raider." Tormund grinned like a wolf with new meat. Ygritte inclined her head, half surprised respect, half suspicion. They withdrew. That night, king and lords gathered in the king's tower mess hall, its hearths roaring. A great map of the lands of Always Winter, copied from ranger sketches, lay unrolled across oaken trestles. Maester Aemon, frail and blind yet keen of mind, listened as scouts reported white sightings clustered east of the Frostfangs. Rhaegar traced lines with a candle stub. If the dead mass at Skirling Pass, they mean to take the wall there. The gorge is narrow, defensible. John Connington shook his head. Too narrow for our numbers. We choke ourselves. Ser Barristan suggested splitting forces, place 1,000 at each castle for 10 leagues both ways. Spoiling sorties could draw them piecemeal. Robert snorted. And send good men floundering through snow chasing blue shadows? We need one hammer blow. Meet them at the pass, break them, be done. Eddard's voice cut calm. We cannot break what doesn't bleed. Only fire stops them, steel is not but wind. Lord Commander. Gior stroked beard. Wildfire burns hot even on snow. Silence thickened. Wildfire was word of dread. Rhaegar met Ned's eyes. My father hoarded it to destroy. I mean to wield it to save. He turned to the master pyromancer, summoned north with casks of the stuff. Can we deploy wildfire safely outside the wall? The alchemist bowed stiffly. Wildfire cares not for walls, your grace, only for victims. But mixed with lamp oil in clay pots, we can hurl it from scorpions. And dragonglass blades pierce the others like hot iron through wax. He displayed black dagger shards recovered from frozen barrows. Rhaegar's expression sharpened. Then we prepare dragonglass arrows and wildfire pots. We build ramparts of snow, ditches of oil. He looked to each lord. This is no chivalric field. This is the war of survival. No one argued. Over the next fortnight, Castle Black transformed into a fortress of coexistence. Wildlings flocked through the gate under rangers' eyes, ragged mothers clutching babes, spearwives glaring at knights, giants lumbering behind wooden sledges. Northern soldiers escorted them onward to hastily pitched camps beyond the Giftlands. Grain stores emptied, caravans from Winterfell and White Harbor labored north laden with barley and salted fish. At night, campfires flickered like a second starfield beneath the wall's looming immensity. Lyanna arrived with Aemon bundled deep in furs, escorted by Ser Arthur Dayne and a personal guard of northern riders. Elia remained in King's Landing by Maester's counsel, but sent a letter sealed in Martell read, "Keep flame alive." Lyanna found Rhaegar atop the wall's dizzying heights staring into leagues of moonlit nothing. She pressed gloved fingers to his and whispered, "Home feels far, but I would have followed you farther." He kissed her frost-burned knuckles. "Home rides with us." Below, Robert taught cursing contests to giant children, Jaime sparred free folk champions, Mormont scolded recruits who muttered slurs. The Night's Watch rang with hammer on anvil forging dragonglass arrowheads, obsidian shards glimmering purple and green under torchlight. Maester Aemon worked sleepless, grinding shards into shiv points for spear shafts. Yet for every hope dread mounted, ravens failed to return from the east. Tracks of white-furred dire wolves appeared where no wolves ranged. And at dawn on the first day of the deep cold moon a horn blast thrummed across the frozen forest, 3 sounds, low and dreadful, rolling like thunder. The watch knew the code. 1 blast, rangers returning. 2, wildlings. 3, the others. Panic surged. Men scrambled to walls, knocking arrows. Rhaegar donned helm and crimson cloak, blade dark sister slung at hip, its smoky Valyrian waves thirsty for deeds. Robert hefted hammer, antlers gleaming with hoarfrost. Ned Stark drew ice, long claws shimmering in pale glow. Far below, through drifting snow, shapes emerged from the tree line, white silhouettes gliding, silent. Some rode dead horses half-rotted, eyes radiant blue, hooves crunching without sound. Ahead of them, corpses shambled, wildlings and rangers alike, flesh pallid, armor rimed, movements jerky yet purposeful. The horde rippled across drifts. A second horn call, urgent, reported from the east watchtower, "Flank! Flank!" Rhaegar barked orders, Castle Black remains anchor. Glovers to east parapet. Bracks to western ditch. Pyromancers stand ready. The night flared green. Wildfire pots catapulted over the wall's lip, shattering below in blossoming jade conflagrations. Whites caught in inferno crumpled, limbs thrashing before reducing to black ash. Yet others skirted flames, frost preceding them. One lifted spear of crystal ice toward the parapet. A shard of air congealed and shot upward like lightning, impaling a soldier beside Rhaegar. The man collapsed, frozen solid, shattering on stone. Terror rippled, but discipline held. Rows of archers loosed dragonglass shafts downward. Obsidian tips pierced white skulls, bodies fell inert. When an arrow struck an other square in chest, the being exploded into a fine mist, armor and spear falling empty. Cheers rose, cut short by shrieking wind, unnatural blizzard swirling, dousing torches, muting hoarse cries. The temperature plunged, crackling water barrels to ice instantly. Through the maelstrom advanced tall figure in armor like moonlight on still lakes. Its eyes glowed cold azure as any abyss. It carried a sword of pale crystal. The Night King whispered Maester Aemon from his infirmary perch. Though blind, he felt the presence. On the eastern crenellations, Jaime Lannister saw his breath freeze mid-exhale. He raised O Keeper, Valyrian steel gleaming red-black. The Night King raised hand, ice spires erupted from the wall's face, toppling men. Jaime leapt aside, then charged, blade slashing. Valyrian met crystal, sparks of blue and red seared air. The Night King parried with inhuman grace, riposting. Jaime's gauntlet cracked under force, but he held ground. Elsewhere, Robert's hammer shattered white skulls 3 at a time. He roared laughter that turned to vapor. Come, ghosts! Come taste stag. Wildfire fires burned out, leaving splotches of melted snow that refroze glassy. The dead pressed on. Rhaegar spotted a breach where whites climbed grappling carcasses like macabre ladders. He sprinted down inner stairs, Dark Sister drawn. Jon Connington followed with a squad. At the base, they engaged whites in narrow tunnel, swords flashing green-black. Obsidian blades felled swarms, but for each corpse another crawled. Sweat froze on cheeks, blood splattered purple. Suddenly a horn above signaled 4 blows, a pattern unknown. Men glanced skyward, a glow on horizon, southward, fiery orange against dark. Another horn, 5 blows, desperate. Rhaegar's mind raced, not code, but alarm. He raced back to top. Across the gift, a column of fire snaked along treetops, wildfire erupted along hidden trench lines laid weeks before by pyromancers to protect retreat paths. But they'd not been meant to ignite yet. Someone had lit the line prematurely, cutting off supply wagons and, worse, catching free folk caravans still moving towards safe camps. Screams drifted faint on wind. Sabotage, Ned growled, reaching parapet. Rage filled his eyes at the sight of burned refugees. Littlefinger's words returned, hearts have prices. Rhaegar scanned the outer yard, saw a cloaked rider spurring horse south, trailing torch smoke. Lannister crimson glinted on scabbard. Stop that rider, he roared. Too late, the traitor vanished into snow. The Night King seized moment. He vaulted unnatural height, landing atop parapet beside Jaime. Dismay rippled along wall. Jaime slashed, but the Night King parried, left fist grasping Jaime's throat. Frost climbed golden hair. Oathkeeper tumbled. In that instant, Rhaegar leapt, Dark Sister singing through frosted air. Valyrian edge met pale armor at juncture of neck and shoulder, bit deep. The Night King released Jaime, pivoting, but the gash splintered icy armor, blue light crackled. Screeching like glaciers grinding, the entity reeled. Rhaegar drove blade deeper, twisting. With shattering cry, the Night King burst into plume of crystalline shards, a sapphire corona expanding then fading into snow. For a heartbeat, silence. Then whites below spasmed, collapsing lifeless. The blizzard eased. Cheers erupted, Watch brothers, wildling scouts, knights, and free folk together. Jaime, shaking, retrieved O Keeper. You saved me. Rhaegar offered hand. Jaime clasped it, eyes haunted. Debt weighed between them. But victory soured quick. Connington reported wildfire blaze cut supply lines. Hundreds of free folk incinerated. Sabotage suspected Lannister mercenaries. Worse, scouts claimed pockets of whites still active. Night King's death not entire end. Maester Aemon later confirmed at council. The Night King you slew may be but a lieutenant. Legends say 13 kings once took the name. He coughed blood flecks. The great other yet abides. While healers tended wounded, Rhaegar confronted politics. Giants blamed southern lords for wildfire. Northern men blamed wildlings for breach distractions. Rumors spread that Dragon King orchestrated fires to cull savages. Tywin's agents sowed discord. Rhaegar summoned council of wildling chiefs, Night's Watch, Northern and Stormland commanders. In the common hall beneath flickering torches, he stood on trestle table so all could see. Traitors lit that fire. Not free folk, not watch, not knights sworn to me. Someone who profits from discord ignited it. He raised voice. We will find them, but first we must steal for next assault. The wall stands only if we stand together. Tormund's booming laugh broke tension. Ha! Pretty words for a southbound princeling. But you swung steel true. I'll follow your fight. He spat and palm extended. Rhaegar clasped. Wildlings cheered, stamping boots. Mormont nodded approval. Even Robert clapped Rhaegar's shoulder. Dissension dulled. Weeks passed in fevered preparation. Connington's scouts captured 2 Lannister sellswords near burned trenches. Under cold cell questioning, they confessed being paid by Ser Amory Lorge to sabotage wildfire lines, claim blame on wildlings, and retreat south. Dispatch riders bore news to Casterly Rock. Tywin's reply, unauthorized action by Rogue Knight. Will discipline. He offered token reparations but refused to ride north, insisting western borders required defense against Ironborn. Rhaegar clenched letter. He tests us. Eddard said the dead test us harder. Supply scarcity worsened. Grain rationing near famine. Robert's beard frosted as he supervised foraging parties. When he learned Stormland's lords withheld wagons south of the Neck, he stormed into their camp and beat his bannermen with fists until they pledged convoys north. South, Elia labored night and day to martial kingdoms, letters to Highgarden for bread, to Sunspear for citrus, to Riverrun for riverfish. She countered Faith militant censure by standing barefoot at September Baylor's pulpit, declaring, "If polygamy be sin, then let me burn first, but I will burn with my children in arms before I forsake the realm's survival." The spectacle swayed crowds. The High Septon grudgingly pronounced unity paramount. Lyanna, at Castle Black, trained spearwives and Northwomen in dragoglass daggers. She sang songs of the wolf's wood at night, lulling children. Rhaegar visited cribs each dusk, touching brow of Aemon and writing lines of a lullaby for them to remember if he fell. Then on midwinter's longest night, ravens returned from Eastwatch, feathers frozen, talons broken, scrolls blank save smear of blood. Next morning, scouts found Eastwatch gates torn open, walls icy ruin. Connington led search party over rubble. No survivors, only charred patches where wildfires had burned. Tracks northward suggested mass of dead crossing frozen bay of seals, bypassing wall. Alarm spread. Maester Aemon whispered prophecy. When the dead bypass walls, the living must break chains of old hatred. Rhaegar convened war council. "We march east," he decreed. "Meet the horde on open ground before they reach the Neck." Robert slammed fist in agreement. Ned nodded grimly. Jaime said, "What of the watch garrisons west? We leave a skeleton force, no pun." Rhaegar smiled thin. "If we fail in east, the west is lost anyway." Gloom accepted. Days later, thrumming drums signaled departure. 10,000 men, women, giants, mammoths, knights, free folk archers. The greatest host ever beyond the wall trekked across wind-scoured tundra toward Whistling Sea. Snow glittered under one sun. Scouts rode ahead on shaggy garrons. They reached the fangs, ridges above the bay frozen into jagged plains. Distant horizon pulsed with pale blue lights, aurora swirling above what looked like storm cloud but moved with unnatural tide. The army dug trenches, raised wooden palisades, positioned scorpions. Pyromancers aligned green glass pots along kill lanes. Giants hefted felled pines as clubs. Night fell. Stars vanished behind creeping gloom. A silence pressed on the soul like weight of oceans. Then a low moan drifted, wind yet shaped like lament. Shapes appeared, thousands, 10,000s, a silver glacier sliding across ice littered with jagged black rocks. The army of the dead advanced. No horns blew, sound frozen throats. Rhaegar drew Dark Sister, blade black fire under Aurora. He turned to ranks. Fire. Flaming arrows streaked sky, landing in front lines, igniting oil pools. Green wildfire erupted, curtain of emerald. Whites at vanguard ignited, shrieks unnatural, but horde behind climbed over. Giants roared, loping forward with clubs, smashing bones. Mammoths pulled log sledges loaded with burning pitch, releasing into throng. Scorpions launched clay pots, rainy, liquid fire. Then others strode forth, tall ice-armored warriors in formation, their crystal spears exuding cold that quenched wildfire with insteps. Flames hissed, died. Panic rippled. Rhaegar spurred Dawnfire down slope, Robert alongside, Jaime close, Ned with Northern Guard. They crashed into line where wildfire failed, hacking with Valyrian swords, dragoglass axes. When Valyrian struck other, ice swords shattered, bodies exploded to snow, but for each fallen, 2 more advanced. Above battle, aurora threads converged, swirling lights birth figure larger than previous Night King, ancient crown of ice, cape swirling storm. It raised both hands, avalanche of shards rained upon palisade, impaling dozens. Wind whirl thickened. Maester Aemon stood atop supply cart chanting words of old Valyria, voice rasp, pyromancers poured daybright oils on braziers flung blaze high. Lyanna, riding great elk, rallied spearwives to flank, using obsidian-tipped javelins to pick off other elites. But dread thickened as Crown King advanced unhurried toward Rhaegar. Connington sounded recall horn, Robert ignored, charging hammer high. Crown King raised palm, frostwave burst, freezing hammer steel, sending Robert flying 10 yards unconscious. Jaime and Ned formed guard before fallen friend. Rhaegar rode directly at foe, dark sister whirling. Ygritte loosed obsidian arrow that nicked King's pauldron crack but no collapse. The Ice Monarch jabbed spear, Rhaegar parried, the shock-numbing arm. He feinted, slashed low, scraping crystal greaves. Blue sparks sprayed. Each blow drained warmth, frost crept across Dark Sister's hill. Meanwhile, others converge. Lines falter, palisade breached, white swarm camps slaying cooks, farriers. Giants fall screaming. High above, a roar echoed not of wind but of beast. All eyes turned skyward. Out of cloud plunged shape enormous, wings leathery, scales obsidian, dragon. Black fire spewed from maw, yet tinted violet, dreamfire reborn? Noah. Dark silhouette bore no rider. It crashed into ground beyond armies, scattering both living and dead. Flames gout blue-purple, incinerating swath. From its back slid slender figure in silver mail. Princess Rhaenys, hardly 14, gripping chain and ancient Valyrian whip stolen from Dragon Pit catacombs. She shouted Dracarys with youthful tremor. Beast obeyed, scorching whites. Shock rippled. Lyanna gasped. Elia's daughter had flown north in secret aboard a Braavosi whaling ship. Then stolen dragon egg hatched by sorcery of Shadow of the Spear. Now revealed to be dissident Red Priest Benero. The dragon, Nightfire, turned battle. Rhaegar drew strength. He disengaged. Vaulted from Dawnfire onto icy ridge near Crown King. Hefting Dark Sister two-handed, he recited prophecy. In the midst of winter, I found there was, within me, an invincible summer. The sword ignited, gold-red flames trailing edges. Wildfire coating steel kindled by dragon's breath that swept overhead. Fire like sun rhymed black blade. He struck. Crown King parried, flames wrapped crystal, fissure spidered. Second stroke cleaved spear, shards tinkled. Third stroke parted Crown King from shoulder to waist. Explosion of sapphire mist roared skyward, shockwave flung white stiff. Everywhere, warriors watched dead convulse collapse. Silence fell, broken only by Nightfire's deep breathing and crackle of distant flames. Snow ceased. Aurora dimmed. Rhaegar knelt exhausted. Survivors surveyed carnage, thousands of corpses, but mostly dead already. Their own losses grievous. Giants nearly extinct, watch halved again, many nights, wildlings, northern suns. Robert staggered upright, bruised dark. He clasped Rhaegar's arm. You killed it, brother. Rhaegar smiled weakly. We killed it together. He looked at Rhaenys standing atop Dragon's forelimb, wind in hair. Pride mingled with fear. He beckoned her, she slid off, ran, hugged him. Ned watched, tears glimmering. Yet Maester Aemon gasped where he lay on sled. Listen, silence, then faint rumble like distant thunder. Eyes turned north, the frozen sea cracking, vast fissure spiraling. Icebergs shifted. From gloom beyond shattered ice, shapes legion emerged, more dead armies, horizon-wide. Aemon whispered, it's only begun. Despair shivered, but Rhaegar stood, flame of purpose rekindled. Then we stand again, and again, until dawn brightens. He called standard-bearers. Sound hope, not fear. Jaime saluted. Robert hefted hammer with grim grin. Lyanna mounted elk, spear raised. Giants few remaining pounded clubs, rallying. Rhaegar turned to dragon. Nightfire, the beast rumbled, sky awaits. He hoisted daughter onto saddle improvised, climbed behind. Firelight gleamed in violet eyes as wings unfurled. Knight and princess rose over host, flames lighting battered banners. Cheer erupted. Below, Ned ordered wounded tended, trenches reset, dragaglass gathered. Connington sent ravens. Victory in east, losses heavy, more dead approach, send reinforcements, send hope. South Elia received raven at dawn, tears and resolve twining. She marshaled lords to ride, Tyrell's errands made ready. Even Tywin at last dispatched legions after reports of Jaime's heroism and near death. In Bravo's Iron Bank offered loans interest-free, survival surpasses profit. In Old Town, Archmesters unlocked forbidden scrolls on dragon steel forging. In Valyria's smoking ruins, whispers stirred that a second dragon egg quickened. Thus the song of ice and fire reached new refrain, a dragon prince astride night flame beneath aurora, a wolf lord rebuilding ramparts, a stag sworn to dragon cause, a lion seeking redemption, queens entwined by love and sorrow, and an empire of living and dead balanced on edge of firelit steel. The war would span seasons, claim heroes untold, rend crowns, and mend hearts. Yet in that frozen dawn, as Nightfire's roar echoed over cracked sea and sun's pale disk limned the wall with gold, hope drew breath anew. And for a heartbeat, Westeros believed that even in darkest night, the music of life could yet outsing the silence of death. Ice dust bloomed from Nightfire's back each time the black dragon's wings hammered the air, showering the battered encampment with glitter that sparkled like ash beneath the thin aurora. Rhaegar guided the beast into a slow spiral above the ravaged plain, taking stock of broken palisades, charred trenches, and half-buried heaps where whites had fallen in thousands. Fires still burned in green and orange knots across the field. Every fresh gust rolled sickly fumes of melted fat and pitch through the silence that followed battle's end. Silence but not peace. Below, ragged companies labored by torchlight to drag corpses into mass pyres before the frost could reanimate them. Giants heaved logs, free folk hacked blackened timbers, and sworn brothers of the watch stood in weary rings keeping vigil with torches and dragonglass spears. To the north the ice sheet groaned. From his vantage Rhaegar watched fissures crawl like living veins across the pale expanse. Where the Night King's death shiver had shattered the Bay of Seals, tide surged beneath splintered crust, thrusting slabs upright like shattered mirrors. Beyond those jagged horizons the next army of the dead was already on the march, no longer a slow glacier of corpses but a tide unbound by walls or water. He felt it in the cold stinging his unlined cheeks, heard it in the mournful creak of Dawnfire's winged joints, smelled it in the sky, a faint, dry scent like dust over a crypt. He banked Nightfire toward the central keep fires. Rhaenys shouted something behind him, muffled in gale. He signaled agreement with a raised gauntlet, then angled downward. The dragon's descent displaced snow in swirling columns. Wildlings and Northmen scattered, capes flapping. When Nightfire alighted, talons scoring grooves through frozen slush, the earth trembled. Rhaegar slid off first, helping his daughter dismount. Her cheeks glowed pink with triumph and fear in equal measure. He squeezed her shoulder. "Stay close to Lyanna," he said. "No more flights until we can fashion proper saddle and rigging." Rhaenys bit her lip. "We saved them." He listened to me. She stroked Nightfire's warm scales as though pacifying an unruly hound. "You saved many," Rhaegar conceded, "but dragons and children both obey their impulses. We must master them, not the reverse." He caught her gaze. "Promise." She nodded, lower lip quivering as the reality of charred corpses and shrieking whites seeped into adrenaline's ebb. He gestured to Ser Arthur Dayne approaching at a trot. "Escort the princess to the healers. Make certain no one else sees that whip unsupervised." Dayne inclined his silver-helmed head. "With honor, your grace." Only when they departed did Rhaegar feel weight press onto his shoulders again, heavier than plate. He strode through half-frozen mud toward a makeshift command tent of black canvas lashed to giant pine trunks. A red lamp glowed within. Guarding the flaps stood Ned Stark, face slate gray under a rim of new frost in his beard. Connington, helm tucked under arm, argued low with Lord Mormont inside. Robert's booming voice cut through every few breaths. The stench of sweat, wet wool, and wildfire smoke filled the canvas. Rhaegar ducked inside. Torches hissed. The long map table had been replaced by a hastily nailed plank where stones marked units, too few stones now for the living. Heaps of crushed ice chips marked rough breadth of the enemy host. Robert leaned over the plank, hair matted with blood. Connington's gauntlet pointed at a curve of cliffs flanking the breach. "They'll come in hours, not days," Connington finished. "Our fortifications were meant for one assault. We've spent arrows, half our wildfire, and half the dragon's glass. Even giants are breathing blood. We cannot hold another wave here." Rhaegar peeled glove, tracing a finger across the crude map. "We hold the crest of the fangs long enough to ferry civilians south across the Bridge of Knives. Then we withdraw toward the gorge. Fresh lines at Queen's Crown, maybe Last River." Robert huffed. "Withdraw, aye, but long enough means what? Another 20,000 dead." Lord Mormont's voice boomed like oak breaking ice. "If we break here, the wall stands open for the world to bleed." Rhaegar straightened. "The wall no longer matters. The sea is frozen, the dead walk around our stones. Our strength is living flesh tempered with fire. Each mile we yield we must buy with ash that cannot rise again. If we scatter them in skirmish." Connington slammed fist, rattling stones. "We cannot scatter a tidal wave. When ice is fluid, you channel it." You dig trenches, the deepest trenches, and drown it in flame. Ned crossed arms. Trenches require time we do not have. Then we purchase time, Connington snapped, eyes flaring toward Rhaegar. You know what that means, Your Grace? Rhaegar's gut twisted. The only reserve of wildfire left with potency enough to create a moat of flame measurable in miles lay within Jadefoot Caves, a warren of fissures beneath the last river canyon. The Guild of Alchemists had sealed near 100 jars inside a stone crypt weeks earlier, fearing sabotage. The plan had been final bulwark, never to be used near any living village. Last River's fishing hamlet now harbored 3,000 free folk and wounded. Detonating that cache would carve an impassable fiery gorge but doom everyone still north of it. He pushed breath through clenched teeth. We evacuate, No, Connington interrupted more gently. We volunteer a regard. The word hung like steel between them. Robert's eyes widened, then narrowed with grudging respect. Ned's lips parted to protest. He exhaled instead, eyes flicking toward the tent flap as though to measure how many men remained for such a task. Connington continued. A detachment of 500, well led, lures the dead past the cave mouth, lights the cache, dies, and buys the living too, maybe 3 days to reform. He set helm on table. I'll command it. Rhaegar saw in his hands solemn gaze the ghost of that brash youth who once dreamed of lilies floating on a trident that never ran red. John Connington had saved Rhaegar from Dornish vipers in stepstone skirmishes, had buried Rhaegar's secrets and carried his sins. And now, without pause, he would torch himself for his king's children. Rhaegar shook his head. No, John. Who else? Robert. Connington's tone softened from challenge to camaraderie. The realm needs his voice to keep stormlords in line. Ned, the North cannot be leaderless in retreat. A brittle smile. The king must not martyr for victory before the battle is won. Robert slammed mug to table. If anyone dies buying time, it ought to be me. I've debts. His gaze strayed toward Lyanna's absent shadow outside. Ned bristled. A debt paid in your own blood leaves the living in arrears. You lead the Stormland Spears or they desert. He faced Connington, but a rear guard of northern volunteers. Rhaegar struck tabletop. Enough. Torches flickered at the thunder in his voice. He surveyed each friend, each rival, each soul weighed heavy with choices. There will be no glorious self-sacrifice decided in a tense hush. We move civilians tonight. We dig every trench we can and rig every jar we have left beneath our feet. If retreat comes, we all retreat behind the last river line. If the trench must light, we light it from afar. He took breath before whispers could bloom. That is my final word. Connington stiffened, but a ghost of relief glimmered in his eyes. Robert exhaled through nostrils like a bull. Ned inclined head, accepting. Lord Mormont grunted assent. Then said the old bear, we need torches and shovels. He stomped out, barking orders before the tent flap fell. The night unraveled in furious labor. Snowshoes thumped, axes rang, dragoglass shards flashed under lanterns. Children still able to walk were shepherded south by sworn swords, each gripping a braided rope connecting 30 travelers. Giants dragged skids laden with wounded, mammoths bore barrels of lamp oil, Barristan led a cavalry screen scouring for white outriders. The moon shone dull behind fast-scudding clouds that glowed faintly with azure pulses, reflections of the army beyond the fissures. Rhaegar worked among pikemen stamping soil. Twice he collapsed from exertion only to rise when Ser Barrist and thrust canteen to his lips. Dawnfire trotted behind like hound following master, frost clouds billowing from nostrils. Once Rhaegar followed Dragon's stare to see Lyanna striding toward him. Spear haft turned walking staff. She pressed a bundle into his hands. Her winter rose cloak, mended. You'll need warmth when night fades, she whispered, eyes brittle. He draped it across shoulders, kissed her brow. And you? I have Eamon's smile. She forced a grin. It warms more than wool. Then she was gone, shepherding a line of mothers with babes bound to chests. Just before dawn, pale gold bled into indigo. The trenches extended like serpents from cliff's edge to shallows of the last river. Barrels of naphtha lined them. Clay pots of wildfire nested in insulated casks. Archers coated arrowheads in pitch. Connington found Rhaegar near the largest cache. Fuses laid. If we're forced back, a single torch from this drawstring will carry flame half a league. He held up a cord knotted like prayer beads. Wind blows southwest. Smoke will drive across the dead. not the retreat lane. Rhaegar clasped his hand's shoulder. I ask forgiveness for denying your sacrifice. Connington chuckled darkly. I am relieved to be alive long enough to complain. He sobered. If retreat becomes rout, promise me you'll fly Eamon and Rhaenys clear first. That I will not promise, Rhaegar said, but I will try. They shared brief clasp, then parted to muster their companies. Mid-morning the frontline scouts returned, pale and breathless. They crossed the fissures, one rast to Lord Mormont. The water froze beneath them as they walked. No horns blew. Every soul already knew. Rhaegar mounted Dawnfire, silver-helm dwarfing his weary features. Robert, on borrowed courser, his own Destria slain, sidled near with rueful grin. Fancy a race to the grave? Rhaegar managed half a laugh. Another day, perhaps. The vanguard deployed. 300 Stormland pikemen under Ser Bryce Caron, 200 Winterfell bowmen under Galbart Glover, a wedge of wildling spearwives flanked by giants under Tormund. Behind them Connington's picked infantry stood at trenches with torches, crossbows, and the cord. The plain fell silent until the faint drumming of bony heels on ice reached living ears. Mist boiled between shattered bergs. Through haze advanced a carpet of corpses more orderly than before. They marched in square cohorts 20 abreast, shields made from frozen hides, spears of icicle glass. Tall white walkers strode among them like shepherds among sheep, each helm crowned by arcing antlers of hoarfrost. Above marched a second rank of frost giants, towering as watchtowers, limbs jagged like sculpted glaciers. Stormland horns shrilled. Arrows loosed, a dark flock arcing into blue ranks. Obsidian belts met white flesh, bodies toppled, but holes closed quickly. Giants hurled boulders, smashing ice warriors to powder. The living roared, then the dead ran. The field erupted into chaos. Atop Nightfire, Rhaegar unleashed gouts of violet flame into dense packs. Wildfire flavored dragonfire into pyrotechnic storms, swaths of dead melted to stinking sludge. But frost giants hurled glacier axes upward. One struck Nightfire's wing, chopping a grotesque chunk of membrane. Dragon screeched, banking out of range, leaking dark blood upon snow. Rhaenys clung to neck rigging, knuckles white. Rhaegar guided beast higher, heart hammering with twin fear for dragon and daughter as ragged cartilage flapped like shredded sailcloth. On ground, frontlines bent. Tormund's giants fought frost giants in brutal ballet, wooden clubs splintered, ice hammers pulverized bone, dragonfire cascaded accidental friendly fire. Still the living held, foot after foot, casualty by casualty. Ned Stark, leading pikemen on left, rammed ice through a walker's core, shattering him like stained glass. Shards detonated, flensing flesh from Ned's cheek. Blood steamed, but he fought on, cloak aflame at corners. Beyond trenches, Connington watched hourglass sands drip, knuckles white around torch. The dead pressed toward ditch, first white toppled in, wildfire barrels wobbled at impacts but remained cold until an ice spear arced and rent clay. A gout of green consumed 3 living sentries, igniting ditch prematurely on rightmost flank. The blaze roared down the trench like serpent, men scrambled back, Connington swore, chopped cord near center, halting fuse, half ditch remained unlit. Hold lines, he bellowed, voice cracking. He distributed spare torches along breach. But breach invited swarm. Whites poured through flame-free gap, climbing slope toward wounded civilians not yet across last river. Robert saw the tide, he spurred into gap with 50 retainers, hammer whirling. He became whirlwind of bone and antler and crushed skulls, but sheer numbers engulfed him. Ned pivoted, rallying pikemen to drive wedge open. Spears jabbed, but white tide kept coming. On ridge Rhaegar felt battle turning. He glanced at Rhaenys. Horror etched across her face, but determination too. He pointed to makeshift roost atop granite outcrop. Land there and wait, he commanded. She obeyed with trembling hands, guiding Nightfire. As Dragon touched down with wounded wing, Rhaegar leapt free, sprinting along. Ridge toward command trench. Snow hampered movement, but he gained vantage above Connington and Robert's beleaguered knot. He unslung a coil of fuse he carried in sash. It ended in a jar the size of toddler's skull, concentrated wildfire, dust-bound in wax. He looked at breach, at families stumbling over ice. He swallowed revulsion. Then he lit fuse at brazier, counted heartbeats, and slung jar like sling stone into maw of breach 30 lengths distant. The jar arced, trailing smoke. It struck trunk of frost giant, burst. A shockwave of searing emerald erupted, catching barrels, lamp oil, pitch lumps, bodies, air itself. Flame sprinted along ditch border to unlit half. In seconds, entire trench became seething wall of green towering thrice man height. Whites at front vaporized, those behind recoiled into their own ranks. Robert staggered free, half-cloak aflame, cursing giddily. Ned hauled wounded pikemen across ditches, flame rear closed. Cunnington stared up at ridge where King stood silhouetted by Saurian sunset. He bowed head once, but triumph fractured. Within the wildfire, silhouettes formed, walkers impervious to lesser flame, striding through like phantoms. The heat made their icy armor hiss, but they marched, bending emerald tongues aside like wheat. One raised frost spear. Flame danced on tip, transmuted to white fire that seared air to crackling shards. The spear launched skyward, struck Nightfire's flank. Dragon roared agony. Rhaenys screamed. Rhaegar's heartbeat seized. Nightfire buckled on ridge, thrashing. The spear embedded like stalagmites sprouting sideways. Ice creeping across scales inch by inch, locking muscles. Rhaenys tried hacking at shaft with Valyrian dagger, but frost crawled onto blade, numbing her arm. Dragon's pupils filmed. Rhaegar sprinted toward them, ignoring slush spray, throat raw with prayers. Another walker emerged at ditch's near edge, raising second spear. No time. Rhaegar leapt between ridge stones, vaulting to Dragon's underside where spear jutted. Frost burned his gauntlets as he grasped it. With gritted teeth he channeled every shred of warmth he owned, memories of summer at Summerhall ruins, of Alya's first laugh when Rhaenys kicked inside her womb, of Lyanna's kisses in morning frost. He felt heat surge, flame flickering across Dark Sister still sheathed. He drew, blade glowing dull crimson as wildfire residue warmed steel. One swing severed spear at root. Shards tinkled. He plunged sword tip into wound, twisting. Dragon shrieked, but frost receded, scorched by Valyrian metal. Rhaenys hacked remaining fragments, ice fell away, veins of steam rising. Nightfire wobbled but freed limb. But second walker had launched spear mid-process. Rhaegar glimpsed white missile hurtling, he shoved daughter down. Spear clipped his shoulder plate, slicing mail, embedding through ridge rock. Ice blossomed across armor, seizing his sword arm. He dropped Dark Sister, ice cresting elbow. Rhaenys cried, Nightfire turned head, exhaled violet gout, incinerating approaching walker to shards. Yet frost still crawled on King. Rhaegar sagged. Connington's yell echoed, roped grapplers hurled upward, Ned scrambled slope. But Rhaegar shook head. Hold the ditch, he barked, voice hoarse. Rhaenys tugged at ice. Father. Listen, he whispered, vision narrowing. Song must endure. Take Dark Sister. Find Bran Stark at Winterfell, he will know. He coughed, blood-flecking ice. No, she sobbed. Then a roar louder than dragonfire drowned everything. Dawnfire, forgotten steed, barreled from rear lines, trampling whites, wings half furled. He leapt ridge, slammed into stone near Rhaegar. The stallion's hooves shattered ice spear, freeing King's arm. The beast nickered, muzzle nuzzling his cheek. Heat of living breath spread across frost. Ice cracked, sloughed. Rhaegar gasped. He seized Dawnfire's rein, thumped neck. Old friend. With horse's warmth restoring blood, he hauled himself upright. He retrieved Dark Sister, rejoined daughter. We need Sky, he told her. She mounted Nightfire again, tears freezing on lashes. Rhaegar climbed behind, ignoring fresh rip and pauldron. Fly south to Last River, torch any whites breaching gorge. They launched clumsily, wounded wing beating uneven rhythm, but altitude gained. Flame rained on dead, still pushing ditch, welding glass and bone into slag. Giants cheered, men roared, morale rekindled. On ground, Connington reformed lines behind Inferno. Robert collapsed to knee, chest heaving, hair singed. Ned clasped his shoulder. Still breathing. Tell Winterfell, Robert panted, their new king of ale survived another folly. Night fell again, purple-black and bitter. The ditch burned a day and a half before obsidian fused into glass crucible. The dead withdrew out of range, camping beyond fissures. Scouts reported they dragged fallen, perhaps reanimating them. Rhaegar convened war council inside cave lit by smoky tallow, most tents scorched. Present, Connington swathed in bandages, Ned with stitched cheek, Robert, bruises bloom, Lyanna, eyes sunken, Lord Mormont, Ygritte wounded but unbowed, Maester Aemon lying on litter, Rhaenys, pale but resolute. Rhaegar spoke first. We held a cost. But cost buys days. Our wounded are 3,000. Our fighting fit less than 6. He turned to Mormont. How many of your ravens remain? 3, and they may not see Castle Black if Sky turns, Mormont rumbled. Then messages must travel on Dragonback. He laid palm on map. We withdraw to Queen's Crown by dawn. Giants and mammoths cross last. Nightfire and I cover sky, Dawnfire covers ground lanes. When Flame Ditch dies, we detonate J-foot caves to widen gorge. Connington studied him. No volunteers? Rhaegar flicked tired smile. I volunteer Dragonfire. It reaches farther than martyrdom. Robert guffawed weakly. About damn time a dragon acted like one. They crafted routes, Ned leading northern column with wounded and free folk, Robert Stormlander's rear flank, Connington Midgard, Wildling scout ahead, Selmy's cavalry screen. Giants to pull siege wagons. Maester Aemon's rasp cut hush. If Gorge fails cease their march, all hearths south will fall unless dragons increase. Rhaegar frowned. You speak of the other eggs? Yes. Aemon's clouded eyes shone with ancient fire. 3 heads to every dragon in prophecy. 1 egg cracks, 2 remain in vaults of King's Landing you lock to hide from greed. Hatch them. Rhaegar exhaled. I have not the sorceress arts. Aemon smiled. You have blood. And song. He gestured to Rhaenys, to Lyanna. Singers must sing. Life for life perhaps, yet choices weigh heavier than fate. The words lodged deep. Rhaegar dismissed council to organize march. But later he sat outside cave, cold moonlight silvering snow. Rhaenys approached, night fire beside. Grand Maester says I am singer. You silence fear, Rhaegar said, by daring impossible. She unclipped dragon whip, offered hilt. I'm not afraid, but I am unsure. Teach me to guide without harming. He folded whip back into her hands. A true rider teaches herself through mercy, not fear. He gazed skyward. One day you will write verses no harp can hold. Snowflakes spiraled between them. Father and daughter leaned toward firelight just long enough to remember warmth exists. Retreat began under morning fog. Lines snaked south past trench still smoking. Snow's earlier trampled now revealed fields of obsidian shards shimmering oil black. Coffles of giants waded last river's shallows, water crackling to steam where still heated by wildfire residue. Children rode mammoth backs, clutching woolly fur. Rhaegar soared overhead, scanning north. Dead host waited, but as living columns slipped beyond ridge, white stirred. Walkers rallied ranks, drummers of bone, horns of ice. Wave advanced again, slower, as though calculating new geometry. At midday last wagons crossed. Pyromancers set wicks into cave fissures along gorge, retreated behind screen of shield men. Rhaegar banked to altitude where air thinned. He could see 2 armies, living and dead, separated by half-mile of charred ditch and jagged gorge. He gave signal, silverwing salute. Connington lit arrow soaked in pitch, aimed at fuse tails. Arrow arced, wick sparked, snaking trails vanished into cracks. Silence. Then J-foot erupted. A roar like all dragons of old shook ground. Emerald white flame belched from mouths of rock, geysers to heaven. The gorge tore open wider, 100 yards of cliff face collapsing, dragging whites into abyss. Black smoke towered, flattening clouds. Heat wave washed across retreating host, singeing furs. Giants bellowed. Mammoths trumpeted. Lyanna shielded Aemon with cloak. As smoke cleared, a canyon of glowing glass yawned between armies. The dead halted, ranks rippling with indecision or perhaps awaiting guidance. No walkers approached precipice. For first time since midwinter, the living felt edge of hope sharpen. Rhaegar landed near Connington. Both gazed over New Gulf. Will that hold? Jon asked. For days, Rhaegar answered. Maybe weeks. Enough for what? To hatch dragons, Rhaegar said softly. Connington nodded once, steel in eyes. Then we ride for Winterfell and King's Landing both. One for prophecy, one for reinforcements. Split forces, Robert joined, leaning on hammer. I'll take Stormlanders to Moat Cailin, hold neck. Ned can rally Riverlands. You, he pointed at Rhaegar, fly south on Nightfire, fetch those eggs, bring back fire that doesn't run out. Rhaegar surveyed battered host. If I leave, morale cracks. Ned placed hand on his arm. It's immense because we believe the king returns. Rhaegar looked to sky shimmering gold where sun-kissed columns of smoke. He realized fate allowed only choices that risked everything. He inhaled crisp air. Then so be it. Tonight I fly for the capital with Rhaenys. Connington, you command northern retreat to Winterfell. Robert covers neck until Tyrells arrive. Ned, hold Queen's crown, send ravens to Arryn and Tully. Plans rippled outward like concentric rings after stone hits icy pond. Quartermasters rerouted supply. Healers packed herbs. Bards hummed tunes of courage though throats cracked. Lyanna confronted Rhaegar in private clearing. You leave again, she said, not accusation but sorrow. I leave so we might return, he replied. He cupped her face. Guard our son. Teach him winter's wisdom. She pressed token into his palm, a simple ring of weirwood root twined with dragonglass sliver. Heart of wood, edge of fire, she said. So you remember why you carve path through darkness. They kissed, taste of ash and snow mingling, then parted. Nightfire, wing bandaged with leather braces, beat sky south under half moon. Rhaegar rode forward saddle, Rhaenys behind, arms around waist. Below, flicker of campfires dwindled until only Starfield remained. Wind howled. Far ahead, red stain of sunrise hinted at warmer lands still ignorant of ice nightmare. As hours stretched, Rhaegar sang low Valyrian lullaby, voice hoarse. Somewhere in verse Rhaenys joined, pitch higher, steadier. Two voices wove through wind. When song ended, horizon glimmered with copper and rose. Rhaegar felt something move within breast. Not prophecy this time, nor dread, but sense of quiet resolve, as if universe paused between chords waiting for final refrain. He clasped Lyanna's ring in gauntlet, felt sliver bite skin. Below glistened white lakes and dark pines. The dragon swept onward, southward, toward King's Landing, where two eggs awaited songs of fire, where Elia prayed amid restless bells, and where politics still brewed poison under gilded spires. Rhaegar closed eyes, letting wind whip silver hair free. The war of ice was far from done, but dawn painted promise across sky. In promise was pain, sacrifice, rebirth. In promise was the song that would not end until every note played, a song of kings who learned to bleed for peasants, of queens who stitched wounds with mercy, of bastards who rose, of dragons reborn, of wolves that howled, wedding of night and fire. And as Nightfire's shadow streaked across first patch of unfrozen river south of the neck, the world below seemed to draw breath. Somewhere north, in gorge still flickering green, a shard of shattered walker armor twitched, knitting shards round remnant sliver of frost-blue heart. Eyes reopened, cold and infinite. The war moved to next verse. Yet that would wait another sunrise. For now the dragon chased dawn, and hope rode its back, wings outstretched enough to carry every desperate dream of men. The song continued. Rhaegar tasted salt on the night wind long before the lights of King's Landing breached the horizon. From the back of Nightfire the sea reflected silver ribbons of moonlight, calm and deceptive beneath the dragon's shadow. They had flown south unchallenged, crossing the neck in 3 great leaps of wing and gliding down the King's Road as if dawn itself pulled them forward. But as the dark bulk of Blackwater Bay curved into view, he saw no familiar lantern chains guiding ships, no lamplit ferries slipping across the water like fireflies. The shoreline glittered with scattered campfires, instead armed encampments where Tyrell men and royal wheelhouses had gathered outside the gates waiting for news from the frozen north. A siege camp of allies, he thought grimly, proof that fear could cripple faster than any invading foe. Nightfire banked low over the river, one wing still stiff with bandage, violet flames tapering from parted jaws. Dockworkers scattered, boats rocked in panic tides, and someone below sounded an alarm bell that echoed across the slumbering quays. Rhaegar circled once, identifying the massive square keep of Maegor's Holdfast within the red keep walls, and signaled his daughter. Rhaenys clutched harder around his waist but nodded. She understood. Dive fast, land inside the inner ward before crossbowmen mistook them for assault. The dragon's talons clattered against cobblestones. Guards shouted, steel flashed. Rhaegar slid from saddle, pulling helm free. "Stand down, your king returns." The words cracked like thunder. All motion froze, helms dipped, lances drooped. Elia emerged from archway in wool cloak, flanked by Ser Barristan and 3 Dornish guards. She ran unsteadily, breath frosting before her lips. Rhaegar reached her in 2 strides, enfolding her in arms that still trembled from cold and exhaustion. For a moment, nothing else existed but the warmth of that embrace and the new heartbeat fluttering in his ears, proof that life endured beyond the wall of dead. "Rhaenys?" Elia whispered into his chest. Alive came Rhaenys' shaky voice. She slid off Nightfire's side and hurried into her mother's arms. Elia pressed foreheads together, tears glistening. A collective sigh rippled through soldiers, tension bled away. Yet solace turned quickly to urgency. Rhaegar looked to Barristan. "State of the city?" "Food short but stable. Tyrell grain trains arrived yesterday. Lannister gold financed mercenary garrisons along the Rose Road. Faith millet and quiet for now. But there is unrest, rumors of fire in the north of ice demons. And Tywin Lannister waits at Harrenhal." Rhaegar closed eyes. He had no time for Tywin's games. Let ravens fly, all able alchemists and maesters to assemble at Dragapit by sunrise. Prepare the eggs. He met Elia's startled gaze. "We hatch them or Westeros is lost." The dragon pit lay like a husked shell on the hill of Rhaenys, a titanic dome shattered in the long-ago uprising that killed the last dragons of House Targaryen. Moonlight pierced holes in the roof now, illuminating dust-coated bones and scorched stones. Rhaegar walked at the head of a silent procession, Elia and Rhaenys on one side, Grand Maester Melas and 3 senior pyromancers on the other. For Kingsguard carried an iron-bound chest, inside 2 dragon eggs older than memory dormant beneath layers of velvet, each the size of a newborn babe. When the party reached the center of the pit, Rhaegar dismissed all but those essential. Nightfire lumbered in behind, settling amid rubble with hissing breath, torchlight reflecting in gold-ringed eyes. The pyromancers unpacked braziers, mounted charcoal, sprinkled jade-green powder, then stepped back in deference. Melas unlatched the chest. The first egg weighed heavy as sorrow, crimson scales shot through with threads of obsidian. The second shimmered pale gold tinged with blue, like dawn glimpsed through winter glass. Elia traced the golden egg, wonder and dread in equal measure. These have lain silent since Aegon the Unworthy. Perhaps waiting for winter, Rhaegar murmured. He knelt, placing eggs in stone cauldron lined with black sand. Rhaenys joined him, clutching Dark Sister across her knees. Torch flames danced in her wide eyes. Melas began a droning Valyrian chant, older than Old Town, voice wavering with age. The pyromancers spread liquid wildfire around the braziers, sparks crackling green. Nightfire rumbled low, nostrils flaring. Rhaegar closed his eyes, summoning the song that had haunted his dreams since the Trident, minor chords of loss, the major surge of hope, threads of prophecy weaving echo to echo. He began to hum, deep in his chest, tones resonating through vaulted ruin. Rhaenys added a higher counterpoint, hesitant at first, then firm. Elia caught melody next, her voice fragile but clear, and for a breath the pit echoed with Targaryen harmony. Heat swelled. Wildfire flared, washing green across crumbling walls. The charcoal roared, fed by unseen gust, and the eggs absorbed glow, scales brightening. Sweat beaded Rhaegar's brow despite frigid air. He pressed palm to crimson shell. Pulsed, imperceptible but real. Shock jolted up his arm. He sang louder, voice cracking. Cracks like spiderwebs crawled across egg, crimson plates shifting. A thunderous crack echoed. Rhaenys gasped as golden blue egg shuddered. Nightfire reared, wings half unfurling, violet fire flickering inside throat. Pyromancers fell to knees. With a final keen note, the crimson egg split. A hatchling tumbled into Rhaegar's hands. Wet, glistening, eyes closed but mouth open in thin squeal. Scales the color of fresh blood, wings paper thin. Elia laughed, tears sparkling, as second egg ruptured likewise. Pale hatchling curling into her lap, chirping. 2 dragons reborn, Melas whispered by the 7. Rhaegar lifted the red dragon, crooning in Valyrian. It bit his thumb, tiny needle prick. Blood welled. He let droplet drip onto hatchling's tongue. Eyes snapped open, molten gold pupils narrowing. The bond forged ancient as fire. Rhaenys cradled the pale sibling, tracing ridges with awe. Nightfire loosed a roar that rattled masonry. The newborns answered with squeaks. In that cacophony, Rhaegar knew hope had changed form from fragile to razor-edged. 3 dragons now soared on Fate's board, Night Black, Dawn Gold, and Blood Red. Dawn found the small council convened in the Tower of the Hand, adrenaline replacing sleep. Tyrell emissaries, Varys in lavender robes, Ser Jaime fresh from Harrenhal envoys, all-ring table where 2 braziers burned to offset chill. Rhaegar entered with Elia, Rhaenys, and both hatchlings perched on staff poles, wings beating lazily. Gasps, one stifled scream, a crash of quill ink. These, the king announced, will fly north before the moon turns. But dragons alone do not win wars. Unity does. I swept lords. Tywin Lannister camps beyond Blackwater. I will grant him audience, but on my terms. His men ride north under Stark command. His gold finances grain stores in Riverlands, and Ser Jaime remains as my P. Rinse of justice to root treason here. Jaime's eyes widened. Tyrell Lord Paxter murmured. Emissary from Dorne smiled faintly. Rhaegar faced Varys. Send Raven to Harrenhal. If Lord Tywin refuses, he shall remain warden of empty castles. For I will strip the West's wardship and grant it to whomever stands against the long night. Murmurs grew. Jaime bowed low. I will accept duty, your grace. Rhaegar turned to Tyrell delegate. Mace's levies must march by week's end. Robert Baratheon holds the neck. He needs fresh men and cattle. The delegate nodded vigorously. Highgarden stands ready. A maester bustled in, pale with haste. "Your Grace, a raven from White Harbor." Prince Aegon and Princess Rhaenys' foster entourage arrived safely. The North rallies. Relief flickered across Elias' face. Rhaegar dismissed counsel. Afterwards, he drew Jaime aside. "You will ride tonight to greet your father. Remind him Kingslayer was forgiven once. Betrayal twice cannot." Jaime's jaw tightened. "He will test you yet. Then I will meet test with flame." The crimson hatchling on his shoulder chirped. 3 days later, King's Landing erupted in spectacle as 3 dragons soared above the city, Nightfire leading with bandaged wings stronger now, followed by hatchlings flitting awkwardly around. Dawnfire's gallop through streets. Citizens gaped at living myth while heralds proclaimed new age of dragon flame. That same day, Tywin Lannister accepted parley terms, though neither warmth nor humility marked his bow. "The West rides," he said, "eyes ice. But a lion does not fetch sticks." Rhaegar answered with curt nod. "Then fetch victory." The campaign north resumed. Great columns of Tyrell levies, Lannister knights, Arryn archers spilled through Rose Road and Gold Road, converging at Harrenhal. Jaime rode ahead, banner streaming, gold lion and red dragon entwined. Rumor claimed the 7 themselves walked among them in disguise. Men needed such tales. In Winterfell, Ned Stark oversaw arrival of weary refugees. Lyanna taught smiths to forge dragonglass arrowheads day and night. Eamon Snow toddled through halls chanting "Rar" at Direwolf Pup. Cunnington established command center in Great Hall, quills scratching over maps. Ravens arrived, Ironborn fleets striking Arbor. Euron Greyjoy claiming he possessed horn to bind dragons. Essosi mercenaries landing at Maidenpool, funded by Braavosi Dal merchants fearing long winter would ruin trade. Chaos multiplied. Still the dead advanced. Scouts from Gorge reported fissures icing over again. Whites bridging gap with bodies. Time shortened. When Rhaegar rejoined army at Moat Cailin, winter sunlight glinted off lines of new dragon banners. 3 creatures soared overhead now, Nightfire Black, Baelor, the Crimson, and Elenia, the Dawn-colored. No larger than war dogs but growing by hour. Soldiers cheered at shriek of wings, though some crossed themselves. Robert greeted King with stout hug. "Good to see you, brother." Neck reeks of bog but holds firm. Tyrell Brett arrived just in time. Word came that Stannis Baratheon, having seen dragons over Crownlands, pledged fealty, his Sellsword company redirected to fight dead. Rhaegar wrote pardon for his stubborn brother-in-law. Joint War Council convened in reed-thatched longhouse, Rhaegar, Ned, Robert, Connington, Varys, Theon Greyjoy as hostage envoy, Ygritte for free folk, Lady Brienne representing Tarth Knights, Lord Willem Manderley. Plans coalesced. Stage grand defense along King's Road north of Queen's Crown where open tundra allowed dragons full range. Dig flame trenches laced with naphtha shipments from Tyrell still. Incorporate Melisandre-led red priests to bless fire as Lightbringer. Free folk giants to hold flanks. One obstacle, Euron's rumored horn, Dragonbinder. If true, dragons risked enslavement. Rhaegar dispatched special force, Ser Davos, Jaime, and Rhaenys atop Nightfire to hunt Iron Fleet before assault. Euron's flagship Silence sailed summer sea near Arbor when black wings eclipsed sun. Nightfire Dove, violet flame scorching sails. Silence answered with ballista bolts tipped in dark glass. One struck Dragon's bandaged wing, but Davos had slipped aboard a skiff, climbing hull with grapnel. Jaime followed. On deck they confronted Euron, horn in hand, runes glowing. He blew once, sound like graves opening. Nightfire writhed, shrieked, began spiraling. Rhaenys clutched reins, tears streaming. But Baelor and Elenia, still small, circled unaffected. They dove at Hornblower, screeching. Jaime engaged Euron, Valyrian Oathkeeper ringing against Night Steelaxe. Davos tackled Horn from behind. Euron slashed, severed Davos's ear. Jaime parried next blow, drove pommel into Pirate's jaw. Rhaenys landed Nightfire crashing onto deck, tail sweeping sailors overboard. She leaped off, plunged Dark Sister through Horn just as Euron tried second blast. Horn shattered, shards speared his throat. Black blood erupted. Silence caught fire, listing. Davos waved Rhaenys back to Dragon. Jaime swung into saddle behind. They lifted moments before ship exploded in wildfire stores stolen from Lannisport. Horn destroyed, threat ended. Ironborn morale shattered, fleets retreated to Pike, harried by Tyrell galleys. Final march on ice began with Omen, red comet streaking dawn sky over Queen's Crown. Some called it Sword of Morning, others Bleeding Star. Rhaegar accepted both. He rode at head of 50,000 souls, men and women, giants and dwarfs, Dornish spears, Reach pikes, Westland knights, Arryn falcons, Greyjoy defectors, free folk archers. On ridge overlooking frozen river, trenches glittered with oil. Catapults loaded with wildfire jars lined ramparts of packed snow. At center, pyres awaited for immediate burning of dead to deny swelling enemy ranks. Behind lines, 3 dragons perched on black rock spurs, Nightfire huge and menacing, smaller siblings flanking. The dead arrived by dusk, horizon filling with swirling snow that was not natural. First came Whites, horde unending, then new White Walkers arrayed in phalanx, their armor now black crystal absorbing light. Amid them marched monstrous forms, ice bears thrice man's height, skeletal mammoths pulling sledges of screaming prisoners meant to replenish ranks. In their center glided a figure taller than previous Night Kings, mantle shimmering rainbow of frozen light, crown of jagged starlight, the Frost Shepherd, last and greatest lord of the others. The Frost Shepherd raised crystalline staff, blizzard howled. He spoke in voice that cracked air, fire will fail. Night is truth. Rhaegar answered, wind carrying his words, night yields to dawn. He raised sword, now reforged with dragon steel, a marriage of Valyrian alloy and dragoglass. Blade shimmered with inner ember. Horns blared. Catapults launched green comets. Trench lines ignited, walls of flame roaring. Dragons took flight. Nightfire dived, bathing front line in violet conflagration. Baelor and Olenna darted, wings nimble, torching flanks. Living armies charged. Tyrell pikes met White surge, Northerners stabbed with dragonglass spears, Dornish cavalry flanked. Giants hurled boulders. Dragons screamed overhead. The Frost Shepherd advanced unfazed, staff spun, conjuring shards of absolute cold that quenched flames, created bridges across trenches. White Walkers followed path, spear tips pulsing blue lightning. One gesture and Ice Bear rampaged, mauling lines. Connington rallied reserves, throwing Lannister heavy knights forward. Robert hammered Ice Bear skull, bones exploding. Eddard dueled Walker captain, ice glowing. Jaime and Brienne fought back-to-back, slaughtering Whites. In sky the dragons engaged frost wraiths, winged spirits conjured from storm, intangible save by dragon fire. Olenna was pierced, shrieked but recovered, tail smashing wraith into spectral mist. Baelor's chest bled, yet still spat fire. Rhaegar locked eyes on Frost Shepherd. He spurred Dawnfire, no longer warhorse but steed adorned in scale barding. Through surge of Whites he charged, blade flaming with wildfire coating. Lyanna saw and followed on stolen destrier, spearwife band at heels. Guardians of Shepherd stepped forward. 5 walkers wielding blades of darkness. Rhaenys of Nightfire behind enemy. Flaming path for father. Rhaegar and Lyanna met at breach. Together they carved. Dark sister in Rhaenys' hand danced. Lyanna's weirwood root spear glowed. Walkers fell shattered. Frost Shepherd thrust staff. Blast of cold sent Lyanna tumbling. Rhaegar parried. Frost climbing blade. Fire dimming. He called to Baelor. Hatchling responded. Swooping. Unleashing torrent of magma-hot flame fueled by inner growth spurt. Flames met cold beam from staff. Aurora swirl erupted. Blinding. In Vortex's heart, Rhaegar lunged. Sword driving into Shepherd's chest. I screamed. Staff exploded into ice dust. Frost Shepherd seized Rhaegar's wrist, blue eyes boring. Ice tried to crawl along sword into flesh, but Lyanna thrust spear from side, dragoglass tip piercing neck. Rhaenys swept down, dark sister cleaving. Triple strike. Light burst white. Shockwave rippled across battlefield. All walkers disintegrated, Whites collapsed inert. Snow ceased. Sky cleared to brilliant tapestry of stars. Silence flooded. Cheers erupted in waves, disbelief turning to exultation. Giants pounded chests. Free folk howled. Tyrell trumpets blared. Robert collapsed laughing. Connington dropped to knees. Rhaegar slumped, sword still lodged in melting armor remnant. Lyanna knelt, checking his pulse. He lived, frostbite ringed his eyes, but warmth returned as Baelor perched beside, crooning. Rhaenys slid from Nightfire, tears sparkling. Father, mother, daughter embraced amid shards of fallen night. Aftermath consumed weeks. Corpses burned. Rangers tracked final pockets of animated dead, most dissolved. The wall remained breached but irrelevant, true peril had passed. Winter's chill lingered yet nature no longer raged unnatural. At Winterfell great moot convened. Lords of every kingdom, free folk chieftains, the faith, the citadel, even merchant princes of bravos attended. In Godwood beneath Hearttree heavy with frost, Rhaegar stood flanked by Elia and Lyanna, children before them, dragons perched on weirwood branches like living miracles. He spoke little, thanked bravery, mourned fallen, proclaimed dawn of great peace. He invited free folk to settle gift lands as equal subjects, granted dower lands to giants in Norray Hills. He named Jon Cunnington protector of realm until spring harvests. He pardoned Ironborn who turned against Euron, executed those who persisted. Then he turned to prophecy. Fire and ice met, and life persisted not by one sword but by many. We are the song. Bells rang across courtyard, not for war but for promise. That night, Bran Stark, now strange seer touched by old magic, approached King. Darkness will come again, he warned, pale eyes seeing distances. But you have taught songs to remember flame. He placed hand on Baelor's snout. Teach the world not to fear dragons, but to sing with them. Years later, ballads would recall Battle of Jadefoot Gorge, Flight of the Threefold Fire, and Pact of the Dawn. They would speak of Rhaegar Targaryen, twice-crowned king, who forged kingdom of wolves and dragons united. They would speak of Queen Elia the Compassionate, whose letters fed starving towns, of Queen Lyanna the Spear Wolf, who patrolled north on Giantback, of Princess Rhaenys, first of new dragon riders, whose whip never bled slave, of Baelor the Red, who lit the night sky with ruby wings, of Elenia the Dawnbringer, whose song healed barren fields, of Nightfire the Keeper, black as regret but loyal as morning. Yet on quiet evenings in rebuilt summer hall, when embers banked low, Rhaegar sometimes lifted his silver harp and played the old, unfinished melody. Children, his, Elias, Lyanna's, Ned's, Robert's, gathered round. Dragons dozed hearthside. Outside, world rebuilt out of ash and snow. And if anyone asked him then what the song of ice and fire meant, he would smile soft, string one long shimmering chord, and answer, it means we chose to live. The melody rose, weaving through rafters, out starlit window, across fields whispering of spring. It traveled beyond wall remade of resolve, carrying future verses unwritten but promised. And somewhere in that promise every child of Westeros heard distant wings, not of dread, but of possibility.